Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ніхто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на ордів образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 941 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as huge explosions cripple Russia, destroying more ammunition, and also Hezbollah's raising red flags of war, like that's really going to mean something toward Israel. But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and also the heavily escalating situation inside the Middle East, as we've been hearing major news today that Ukrainian armed forces have been able to conduct another major decisive drone attack inside the Russian Federation, knocking out a critical ammunition depot and airfield near to the town of Tigettes within the area of the Russian Rostov-on-Don region, and up near the town of Toropets, a second ammunition depot was hit. Mr. President, there has been a second ammo depot, and this one went up even as big as the last, and ended up shutting down the entire M9 highway traveling from Moscow into the nation of Latvia. A very major hit by the Ukrainian armed forces today throughout the entirety of Russia, and not only that, another attack was also coordinated around the area of Sevastopol, trying to destroy Russian Black Sea Fleet logistical abilities. We're not really sure about the success of that attack at the moment. It appears that air defense was active in that attack, unlike the others, and so it may be that the damage was actually limited in that specific instance. But damage was not limited anywhere else, because the Wagner HQ ended up burning down today inside the Krasnodar Krai Oblast, showing that the Wagner's influence over at least the Russian Federation is largely, even symbolically and literally, coming to a close at this point, as they are pretty much entirely inside of Africa or Belarus, and any ties that they have with the Russian Federation are literally burning away right before their very eyes and the eyes of the entire world. At the exact same time, inside of the Middle East, Israeli defense forces have made a decisive move today to conduct preemptive actions against the illegal proxy forces of Hezbollah, operated and funded by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps out of Iran. We have seen that Israeli air forces and ground forces have been conducting major airstrikes and bombardments of Hezbollah forces within the area south of the Litani, causing incredibly serious damage, incredibly serious losses for Hezbollah forces, and also destroying staging areas, ammunition depots, communication hubs, and everything in between. The airstrikes and explosions were so significant during the nighttime hours that it was seen from an international flight flying all the way from Saudi Arabia to Athens, Greece, from the window of a plane. And we were able to get the footage of that as well just tonight. On top of that, we've also seen that Hezbollah has begun to return fire, firing a large amount of unguided rockets into the area of northern Israel, with the Iron Domes largely intercepting most of the rockets, but some of them are making it through. We were able to see that debris has damaged some of the buildings inside the town of Nazareth within the Upper Galilee region, and it looks as though the Israelis and Hezbollah forces are raring for war, and we will be covering that a good deal again tonight, because it seems like that is once again coming up to a head, much like it has several times in the past few months. Meanwhile, back inside of Ukraine, the Ukrainians are still doing incredibly successful defensive actions in the areas around Pokrovsk and also around Chasiv Yar, and we've also seen that the Ukrainians have continued on their actions within the Kursk Oblast, capturing Russian vehicles and also destroying others in different areas of that campaign. But tonight's news is absolutely massive from head to toe. We have loads of news to tell you all about what's been going on just in the past 24 hours alone, and this is certainly one hell of a night right here. I mean, this is probably one of the ones where we've seen the most big booms that we've ever seen in a single day. Usually we get like one big ammunition explosion every few weeks or so, but not about 4 of them all in a single day, and all of them were incredibly large in scale. And that actually moves us on into the first breaking news, which is the major Ukrainian drone attack that occurred overnight on Russian territory. As the Russians were sitting around doing what the Russians do, which is usually just getting comically drunk, the Ukrainians were launching hundreds of drones from Ukrainian territory and into the area of Russian-occupied Ukraine, and also into the Russian Federation itself. These drones ended up targeting some of the larger ammunition depots that are found near to the area of occupied Ukraine that would be supporting and supplying Russian armed forces in their continued war effort within this region. One of those specific ammunition depots is the Tigettes ammunition depot. The Tigettes ammunition depot is one of the larger ones within this region and is settled right along the E50 highway. This ammunition depot, right here, houses an incredibly large amount of ammunition for its very small size. Many people will note that this is actually a lot smaller than the Tigettes ammunition depot that we saw blow up about 48 hours ago. And y'all would be absolutely correct in believing that this is a bit of a smaller depot. From what we understand, though, it's a lot more densely packed in the amount of ammunition that it's holding in this depot, and also the storage protocols are pretty poor. You can actually just see open trucks and trailers just sitting out in the wide open, and ammunition sprawled out literally across the side of the road, all over the place. Russian ammunition storage requirements or guidelines are piss poor at best. That's really the best way we can describe them, because putting a load of high explosive right on the side of the railroad tracks entering this base generally is viewed by most as a bad idea, and the Russians ended up finding that out about last night. But there is another severe or strategic target within this one town of Tigettes, and that is right over here. Literally just about a mile away from the ammunition depot is a major Russian airbase, and we can actually see that they have renewed the satellite footage in this area to show us something that is incredibly interesting. These are Su-30s. These are largely air superiority fighters. They're technically multi-roles, but they conduct the multi-role poorly. They can't really carry a large amount of air-to-ground ordnance, so they're mostly an air-to-air sort of an aircraft, not really a multi-role that can do air-to-air and air-to-ground at the same time. But an interesting thing to note is that we can actually see that they did paint decoys onto the tarmac, and then they literally parked a plane right on top of it. So is the decoy working? I doubt it. But they still gave it a try, and that's an E for effort, I suppose. But an E for effort is all it's going to remain. Also, look, there's another decoy right there. That one is really badly painted, actually. Horrendous.
Yeah, those are terrible decoys, because like you can obviously tell, like even from the satellite footage, that is so faded out that couldn't be a real aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. And also, it's not even casting a shadow. You know, it's like, these aren't even good decoys. They can't even spend the time to get some carpenters out there just to cobble together a actual three-dimensional model of one of these aircraft so that way it's actually convincing. They just smack some paint down on the tarmac and hope that that's going to work. And that clearly isn't going to work. And it really didn't work, not because the Ukrainians knew better. It's because the Ukrainians hit the ammunition depot about a mile away and the explosion was so big, artillery shells started raining down on this airfield to a severe enough point it ended up destroying it. So, with that in mind, we have to remember that this is the E50 highway. Now, this is going to be very important because the footage that we're about to see, well, at least some of it, actually comes from the E50 highway, kind of close to the airfield and a little ways away from the ammunition depot, about 2 or 3 miles away at an approximated distance. Now, there was a little car that was driving along the E50 from south to north past the area, and they ended up catching something incredibly interesting on their phone, because you see the base was burning at this point. It had already been hit by at least 1 or 2 Ukrainian drones, maybe even more, but as soon as they turned on their camera and started filming, it happened. Oh my god.
Like a fireworks show and a nuclear bomb going off.
That is literally a mushroom cloud right there. It's literally got like the mushroom head to it and everything. This is an insane explosion. The entire base went up in a single explosion. This is insane. Look at the flash from this thing. It literally blinded these people. Right there. That was a blinding flash of light. It created a small fireball right there, vaporizing a pretty good bit of the base. We'll actually show you all that here in a second. But this is a huge, I cannot understate this, huge explosion. This actually beats the Tigettes explosion, at least in a singular size of one of the explosions that happened. This was insane. Shockwave hits him in a second. Right there.
Surely that created some seismic movement like the other one did, because this was massive.
Oh yeah, you know it. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, this is actually from the nearby town of Tigettes. So let me show you all this footage with the context in mind that this second clip here actually shows it from Tigettes. So here you go. This is just some random guy who walked out of his house and saw Hiroshima blow up just a mile down the street. So here it is.
Yeah, boy.
Oh! As y'all can tell, especially by the fireball that I just paused on right there, This is a major explosion of ammunition. From what we understand, about as much ammunition blew up in this explosion, the singular explosion we saw right there, than the entire Torapets explosion that happened 48 hours ago. So now the Russians, in the span of a very short 72-hour window, have lost about 14% of all of the ammunition inside the Russian Federation in just these two explosions. This is a pretty impressive thing, actually, when we're talking about the scale of damage that the Ukrainians have inflicted. And not only that, the satellite footage is showing something insane. They laid waste, like the literal ammunition depot was vaporized. What you're seeing right here are all of the afterfires that landed on the surrounding farm fields, the surrounding villages, and also throughout the remainder of really nothing that's left of this ammunition depot. There are craters down there that are about the size of the ones that you would have seen in World War I that would have counted as the largest combat explosion seen in history up to that point, even beating the Battle of the Crater at the Siege of Petersburg in the Civil War. The explosions in this depot were insane. It was truly unbelievable. And what's even crazier is that the ammunition got flung skyward. Some of it did, still unarmed. Well, actually, it ended up getting armed, apparently by the velocity of getting flung out of the explosion. And it ended up laying waste to the entire northwestern area of Tigettes itself. You can actually see massive fires raging inside of the city because loads of ammunition just came flying right back down, almost in an arc, right down onto Tigettes and started exploding throughout the streets there. And not only
now, what kind of ammunition was in there? Was it small arms ammunition and maybe rockets or something like that? Because I see some people, and take this with a grain of salt, some people were saying that maybe a tactical nuke was being held there. I strongly doubt that because this does not look like a tactical nuke blowing up right here. Just from my limited experience, this does not look like a nuke. But was it small arms ammo, or what was the ammo being held there?
From what we know, it was a wide variety, but mostly artillery ammo for MLRS rockets or towed artillery systems that fire 152 millimeter or 122 millimeter rounds. So it was some of the larger caliber munitions that you would see that were in this ammunition depot that ended up getting blown up. We don't really know if there were any missiles, like when I say missiles, there's a big difference in between a missile and a rocket. Like, we know that there were 122 millimeter rockets and, rockets for the Uragans and the Smerches and stuff in this depot. But what we don't know if there was any Iskanders or Calibers or any missiles along those lines being stored in this depot. That information we really don't have at the moment. We do know that heavier caliber artillery and MLRS rockets were inside the depot when it exploded, and maybe some small arms, but mostly heavy, higher caliber artillery ammo instead.
They must have had that stuff packed in there densely, because this is a massive explosion. And also, I wonder why Ukraine's held off from hitting this thus far. Like, did they hit this with a drone again, or was this a different type of munition that the depot that was hit with?
From what we understand, this was once again a drone attack. Interestingly enough, they are slamming the Russians and their munition depots and airfields and oil refineries, really anything and everything they want, with their drones. Because once again, the Ukrainians came out and made a statement saying that they were able to launch a large drone attack and cause this kind of damage. So it is once again leading us to believe that all of this damage is just being caused by massive drone swarms that are overwhelming the very little Russian air defense that is present, and then slamming into these targets with the kind of accuracy and efficiency to be able to cause these almost Hiroshima level explosions every single time.
Well, certainly effective, because these explosions right here being the largest we've ever seen, like the outside of a nuclear explosion, that's just crazy. Like 2 in a row like that, that's wild.
Man, I'm telling you, man, it is literally crazy. But you know what's even crazier, man? The artillery ended up landing on the Tigettes airfield to the northern side of the town, and the thing was getting smoked like a brisket on a nice summer afternoon. Look at that thing, man. Like, it was a huge fire coming from Tigettes. Now, it doesn't look
Just being scorched.
Man, that thing is being cooked. And of course, we don't see that the fire actually hit the compound down here where a lot of the aircraft were being held. It actually looks like it was north of the actual runway, but there may have been some air defense systems present in this area that ended up getting engulfed by the rapidly spreading grass fire that we're seeing in this video. Although we can't confirm that too much at the moment, and we're really trying to wait to see if we can get more information and evidence of that a little bit later on. But here's a close-up right here of the Tigettes ammunition depot, once again showing the severe damage that was caused to the facility. It looks as though the explosion was so strong, it literally only left probably glass on the ground in some areas. It did turn into a complete fireball, and also it looks to have stripped the entire land around the surrounding area of any kind of grass. Just to give you all an idea of how strong the explosion was, and this is also what it looked like a little bit earlier on an earlier orbit that the satellite took a picture on, and all of the fires that were ongoing inside of the depot still. There has been an insurmountable amount of damage caused by this explosion, and we were able to get a couple of other clips of the explosions happening at this depot. This is another clip of the Tigettes explosion right here. There it is from a considerable distance, hidden behind a cloud a little bit. Dang!
That guy felt that in his soul based on that scream.
Dude, he went, oh! It's like, dang, dude. Wait, hang on. Here we go. Dang, you know that had to have been one hell of a shockwave right there to make someone go, oh! You know, it's like, dang, that thing like punched him. It was so strong through the windshield. That's pretty wild. We now see him collecting himself as he watches the mushroom cloud start to rise in the middle of the darkness.
And, oh, he has an iPhone, that sounds like.
Ding, 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 ding. That was someone calling him saying, hey, did you, like, fall down the stairs or something? It's like, no, man, you don't know what happened out here. By the way, just to give you all a little bit of a recap, the explosions at Tigettes continue to go on well into the day, and we were able to see some of the secondary explosions ongoing right here. So while we saw the Oppenheimer-level explosion happen at night, the explosions continue to go on for about 16 hours or so. So here's a clip of some of it. Oh. Huh, you know, that was interesting. Something, I don't know if that was ammunition coming from out of the explosion. It could have likely been, because it ended up blowing up in a random area around these apartment blocks, but that sounded a lot like an MLRS rocket or some kind of a missile. Once again, we don't have a lot of information to go off of here. We do know that this is around Tigettes, but that was an incredibly weird thing to note at the end of that video, and we'll be trying to find more information on that a little bit later. At the moment, it's a bit of a mystery. But we did also get to see, before we move on from Tigettes, or really start to talk about the damage, that the Sentinel-2 infrared satellite actually passed over the area and made sure to get us the clearest image possible of the damage that was caused. And one thing I would like to point out is how far away some of the fires ended up raging. One, the little village of Kameni, right outside of Tigettes, ended up getting absolutely splattered by the explosion. To give you all an idea of how big Kameni is, this is Kameni, and there is some kind of a huge fireball eating up the entire eastern side of the town, most likely caused by falling ammunition exploding inside the city and laying waste to about half of it. Another interesting thing to note is that the northwestern side of Tigettes ended up getting hit pretty heavily by falling ammunition. It ended up exploding pretty much throughout the entire area of the suburb, most likely causing a significant amount of damage, and also probably causing a decent amount of injuries, maybe even deaths, although we don't know about that at the moment. This is giving us a very good idea that the Russians' ammunition storage protocols are incredibly shoddy at best. We already knew this going into it with how Russian ammunition depots are constructed. They're constructed quite poorly. There almost is no such thing as a hardened shelter. You can see right here, they're sheds, literal just random sheds with dirt ramparts built around them, which are supposed to provide a little bit of protection or really supposed to mitigate the damage of an explosion happening within the base. That is already a pretty bad design principle, and one that you would never see inside of a Western country. To give you all an idea of the difference, at least logistically, in between the Russians and a nation, say, here in the West, I'm going to take you all over here to Alabama, to a army depot that we know pretty well, Matthew and me. which is the Anniston Army Depot. The Anniston Army Depot renovates and repairs a large amount of main battle tanks here in the United States of America, along with infantry fighting vehicles. A lot of M1 Abrams get rebuilt, actually, here at Anniston Army Depot, along with M2 and M3 Bradleys. But another thing that the Anniston Army Depot does is that it also stores some ammunition. And you can see the endless myriad of hardened shelters that Anniston Army Depot has, and you can also see that most of them have a uniform minimum distance, and some of them are even distanced farther than others, a considerable larger amount than we see inside of the Russian Federation. And not only that, the kind of protection that these hardened shelters provide is far greater and also greatly mitigates the chance of any kind of an errant explosion, and not only that, the kind of cataclysm explosions that could be caused by the explosion of a singular hardened shelter. This is the kind of quality that the US military ensures in the background that really starts to throw the budget through the roof for the US military. We spend $900 billion on the military here in America per year, but it's generally these small kinds of things, things that people generally don't notice, like these hardened shelters here at Anniston Army Depot, that end up increasing that cost, but end up massively increasing the safety and efficiency of the U.S. Army's logistics, and really the logistics of all branches, because all military branches here in the United States of America follow pretty much the same ammunition storage procedures and protocols as the other. It's pretty much a requirement laid out by the Department of Defense for all branches. The Russian Federation and most post-Soviet countries don't really have those kinds of storage protocols. They have incredibly shoddy ones because the Soviet Union wanted to store ammunition cheap. And so when we return back to Torpets, you will now be able to see the huge difference. There is not a minimum distancing here. There almost is like a maximum minimum distance. These shelters are incredibly close to each other, wildly close as a matter of fact. The ramparts are only 172 feet away from each other. If one of these were to go up, the others are immediately caught in the fireball and the blast radius, and considering that these buildings are not hardened shelters and they're nothing more than a soft structure building, the explosion immediately blows away the walls, the entire explosive force reaches the next ammunition cache and blows it up, causing a chain reaction all the way up and down this ammunition storage facility and blowing it sky high. There's really no way to stop
it. Looks like Putin went to the Ministry of Defense in Russia and said, we need ammunition storage depots, and we need them fast, and we need them cheap. So they went out literally like the Home Depot and got the Home Depot sheds for like $1,000 a piece, put them out here in a field and said, okay, done, bliat. It's like no cover whatsoever, like no spacing like you're saying, and it's just all over the place. Like you can tell like the placement was not even thought out either. They're literally like just bounced anywhere they can find space to put them with no thought behind it. So just kind of wild to see.
Yeah, and also another thing that blows me away, look at all of the random munitions that are just laid out in the open. It's a literal endless street of it. It's not even in anything. It's just sitting out here. And you know that a lot of this ammunition ends up getting faulty over time because it just gets rained on endlessly, and the humidity and the temperature changes will continuously affect the munitions and make most of them faulty or pretty much duds if they're ever used. And on top of that, these buildings here don't have any kind of humidity control. They're not really sealed, at least at all. So even the ammunition inside of the soft structure buildings, it's not going to end up boding that well either. It's just a horrendous kind of a design and horrendous kinds of ammunition storage protocols. But one thing that this does produce, this kind of incompetence and ineptitude from the Russian armed forces, is the biggest ammunition depot explosions that we've seen in modern times. This beats about everything. You just don't see explosions like this stuff. And this is why. It's a complete incompetence on the design, the implementation, and also the practice of storing and operating these ammunition depots at every single level. It just goes on and on. Literally, it is just pile up ammo. Like over here, it's just randomly piled up. This all isn't even probably uniform or even properly categorized, so that way it's quicker to get if it's needed. It looks like they literally just threw stuff on top of each other out here and just thought, well, if anyone needs it, we'll just come back through and sort through it and then pick what we need and send it on forward. This is absolute insanity on every single level. I've never seen anything like this, and the Ukrainians are certainly starting to take advantage of these very crappy ammunition storage procedures and protocols that the Russians have been implementing for decades at this point. This has never changed from Soviet times. But moving on from this explosion, many people would think, oh, that must be the end of the explosions, right? No! Ukraine went and hit the Toropets area a second time. Because, you know, something that a lot of people didn't bring up, and I didn't bring up either, because I didn't think it would be important, is that Toropets isn't just the only ammunition storage in the area. Now, you would think that this would be it. I mean, it's huge. But no, there's actually one a little bit further south, right down here at Akhtyribisky, right along the M9 motorway, which is the main highway that goes all the way from Moscow to Latvia. This is the highway. If you want to get from Russia to Latvia, you take this highway. And this thing is not that far away from the edge of the highway. It is roughly about 1 mile away. And also on top of that, the town of Akhtyribisky right here is literally on the depot. It's built along the wall of it, or really the depot was built along the very side of Akhtyribisky. Now, this one is pretty big. You can actually look at it here compared to the one up at Toropets, and it's about half the size. It's actually, in fact, bigger than the one that's down at Tigettes, down in the south in the Don region. And the Ukrainians ended up returning to the area today and hitting this one and destroying it as well. And we actually have footage of this depot getting hit right here. Well, actually, sorry, correction. I believe we actually have that right over here. So let me make sure, because we actually had 2 markers here. Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's the depot blowing up in the distance. We didn't get an up-close video. This is the only clip we got of the explosion, so this one will have to do. But here's the explosion up in the area. Nice little morning sun showing up out there a little bit earlier than normal. But then we got to see the firm satellite. And the firm satellite showed the entire damn area is on fire. Like, the entire thing. The town of Akhtyribisky is engulfed in a firestorm at the moment. The entire ammunition depot appears to have also been destroyed as well. And from what we understand, according to Russian authorities, the M9 motorway from Moscow to Latvia, a major highway, has now been shut down because of this explosion in this area. The damage is severe from what we know. We weren't able to get any close-up films of this explosion. Unfortunately, we only have the one, but due to the firm satellite information and also that one video, we can largely confirm that another Oppenheimer-sized explosion happened here at this facility and ended up destroying this one as well. You can also see the poor ammunition storage protocols here once again. You can see ammunition literally laid out in the wide open. If anything goes up, it's going to end up being a chain reaction across the whole facility, and it was only a mere 16 kilometers or about 10 miles away from the Toropets ammunition depot. So now, in about 72 hours, the Russians didn't lose 14% of their munitions. They have lost about 18% of all of the munitions that is being stored in Western Russia in 72 hours. The Ukrainians have done more to get rid of Russian munitions than anyone has done in the entirety of the world. 18%, 1 in every 5 pieces of artillery, really artillery shells, 1 in every 5 MLRS rockets, 1 in every 5 mortar rounds, 1 in every 5 rifle cartridges just got destroyed in 72 hours by the Ukrainians. They have lost approximately around 6 to 7 months of ammunition in all of these explosions in 72 hours alone. This is a very impressive thing strategically for the Ukrainians, because if they're able to keep up these kinds of attacks on most major Russian munitions bases, they may actually be able to deprive the Russians of munitions so greatly they don't have a reserve, and they're actually having to work precisely off of what's being manufactured that day from the factories and trying to ship it immediately to the front lines with no kind of a safety net in the meantime. This is a very impressive thing. I cannot state that enough. And not only that, the Ukrainians expanded the drone attack to Sevastopol, and we were able to see that Russian air defense was active over the port overnight. Oh, you see little puffs of smoke up there showing that the Russians were trying to intercept incoming Ukrainian drones and missiles. We don't know if they were successful in that. We're going to be trying to find a little bit more information. And we also got to see, before I get into the overview of everything that happened today inside of Russia with the huge explosions and whatnot, we also got to see that inside of Krasnodar, the Wagner HQ at Molkino burned to the ground. Look at this Wagner guy in absolute awe of their crappy little headquarters burning to the ground in Molkino. It's a good day.
Wagner just can't catch a break at this point. I wonder if all their Wagner mobiles got burned down with this building.
Man, I wonder, man. But that guy was sitting out there in front of that building watching it burn down, and he said, "That's it, I quit." And he just like walks off. He's just like, "I've hit it. We've been the laughing stock ever since Prigozhin died. That's it. I'm done." And he just wanders
And then
off.
it said, "Tee, you can't quit, Bliat. You were never hired." It's like Wagner basically didn't even exist at this point.
Man, it almost is like they didn't exist. And then the remainder of it was integrated into the Rosguardia and ended up becoming pretty much a little small gang of warlords out in West Africa. And then they got mogged on by the Ukrainian special forces in Mali. So it's like these people have not caught a break since the coup. Like they've ended up becoming the butt wipe for everyone in the world, including the Russians. It's like that is actually pitiful. They went from this like feared, like ruthless, insanely criminal kind of a mercenary organization to the laughingstock of everything everywhere. And now their headquarters is getting burned down. Their crappy little like office block that they had that would be equivalent to an office block in like the outskirts of Detroit, and they're just going to cry about it, and that's it. That's all they could do. But beyond that, the explosions.
And really to me, it's just like really seeing another Russian unit get burned down, because the Wagner's really not independent anymore after Prigozhin died. It is basically like an extension of the Russian military. So seeing the like headquarters burned down, it's kind of meaningless to me. It's kind of like just seeing like any other Russian post get hit, because they're really not independent. They're just like a small little like sort of semi-useful unit that Russia likes to throw around different places like Belarus and places like that to try to intimidate Ukraine.
Honestly, it really is at this point. It's not anything to really be surprised about it getting obliterated or blown up or anything like that. It is what it is. They're almost a joke. But one thing that is not a joke is the damage that Ukraine has inflicted on the Russian munition depots over the past 72 hours. 18% of all Russian munitions have been laid to waste in 3 straight days. That is insane. That is crazy, because to give you all an idea of how long that would have taken for the Russians to actually get rid of that ammo in the war, it would have taken about a half year or 7 months of constant shelling like they have been doing to get rid of all of that ammunition. And the Ukrainians got rid of it in 3 days, and they didn't have it fired at them either. They just ended up blowing it up where it was sitting. Now, a lot of people have been starting to talk about the effectiveness of these attacks. These attacks are honestly more effective in the kind of percentage damage that they're inflicting on the Russians in the munitions category than their attacks on the Russian oil refineries, crazily enough. And a lot of people are wondering, will the Russians start to run out of ammo soon? And a lot of people seem to have a lot of faith that they are. If the Ukrainians are able to keep up with these kinds of attacks and no one is really stopping them, or America doesn't come in and plead for them to stop because they're scared the Russians might get angry. But a lot of people seem to think and be pretty optimistic this may actually be a way to bleed the Russians dry of munitions, to where it doesn't matter if they have an endless amount of manpower, and it doesn't matter if they can cook the books somehow, some way to keep the war going. They may not have the munitions to fight here within a month or two, or they may be really struggling to keep up any kind of offensive momentum, and so while they could stay in the war, Ukraine would largely have the initiative, even against overwhelming Russian manpower advantages. But still, a lot of people have been talking about this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it? Do you think they're actually going to run out of munitions over time? Do you think that they're certainly running out, or do you think it's not that big of a loss or not that big of a deal? And what is everyone else thinking?
So about 45% of the audience said maybe over time Russia will run out of ammo, while 32% said that Russia will start running out right now as a result of these attacks. And 15% said it's really not that big of a loss with just these 2 or 3 facilities that have been hit. And on this one, I will say they probably won't run out of ammo right now, but it will be a little bit strenuous in the meantime until they can ship more ammunition from other depots to the areas that have been affected, because now they've lost these depots, which are close to the Ukraine border, or at least somewhat near it. They're going to bring in ammo from other places to try to reinforce the losses, and that is going to take some time. So they probably will have to start conserving ammo, but it's not going to be like an immediate, like they're completely out. I really doubt that's going to be the case, but it's possible. But me personally, I'm with the 44%. But Enforcer, what say you?
Me personally, I would be with the 44% as well. I'm not going to be overly optimistic on this, because that would be That would be a little unrealistic in my opinion. Now, it's not completely unrealistic. It does seem as though they will start to run out of ammo, but it's going to take time. And time is something that the Ukrainians actually have if they start to inflict a decent amount of damage on the Russian munitions depots. The thing that a lot of people don't know, or a lot of people don't really think about when they talk about analysis and strategy, is that manpower is only one resource in a war. And, you know, that kind of sounds a little bit crass to say that human lives are merely a resource, but when we're speaking about conflict and war, human lives really are mitigated down to just being a simple resource, much like fuel or much like munitions or guns are. And if you have a lot of manpower, but you have no fuel, you can't fight a war. If you have no manpower and you have nothing but fuel and ammunition, you can't fight a war. You have to have enough of everything to be able to keep a war going. Literally every single facet of normal life that every single one of y'all is living, you have to be able to fulfill those needs to be able to keep fighting the war. You have to have food, you have to have fuel, you have to have munitions, you have to have electricity, energy, you have to have transportation, you have to have logistics, you have to have places for people to sleep, you have to have places for people to learn how to fight, you have to have places that people are fighting, you have to have the equipment for these people to fight. You have to consider all of this. That's a part of logistics. And if you have plenty of manpower but you have really no fuel and no ammunition, now you're out of two categories, and you're certainly not fighting at that point because, one, how in the world are these guys, all this limitless manpower, how are they going to end up getting to the front lines? And second, when they get there, how in the world are they going to fight? They don't even have ammunition to fight with anymore. They don't have artillery support. They don't even have AKs with any operational ammo. They have nothing. There's no way for them to fight at that point. Or fighting would be incredibly tough and largely a losing battle on every single front for the Russians because the Ukrainians would have the ammunition advantage in every single category. Now, the ammunition is not going to run out immediately. They have lost 18%, which is a whopping amount to lose across the entirety of the nation in 72 hours. That's actually insane. No one's ever lost that much ammunition in 72 hours. I would say over about the past 100 years, to be entirely honest. But it will start to cause a problem. Russian commanders are going to start paying attention to this, and they're probably going to start curtailing ammunition usage on the front line. The Ministry of Defense may actually send down a memorandum, or really sort of a quota, saying that Russian units can only use a certain amount of munitions, because if this kind of attrition keeps going, they might run out of everything really quickly. Or the Russians might think, if we're running out of everything, we better use it all while we can before we lose it, and see how that goes, and so they could actually increase the volume of fire temporarily before they lose a large amount of their munitions, maybe about half of it or so. But this will start to have a big effect on Russian strategy and Russian logistical planning and also sustainment throughout most of the remainder of the war, and this also will start to pose some pretty big problems for the Russians in terms of air defense, because they have been able to get away so far with not really having a lot of air defense spread out across Russia. They've ended up having their oil refineries obliterated, and they're losing about 600 to 700,000 barrels of usable fuel products per day at the moment, but that's fine, because they can buy that from overseas, largely from the Central Asian countries, so everything is okay, at least for now. But when we're talking about ammunition, things are going to get really rough in that category because the Russians have already tried to max out munition production. We understand that they produce about 40,000 shells or 50,000 shells per month at this point, and if you're getting about 1 in every 5 of those destroyed in 72 hours, you're going to start almost getting down to the point that the shells that are produced today are going to be fired tomorrow, and that's usually not how you really want to do it, because you want to have a bit of a safety net, if you want to call it that. You don't want to be using all of the ammunition that you're producing on a single day, because that means that you're directly reliant on the logistical chain operating at 100% efficiency and every single factory operating at 100% efficiency without any kinds of problems at all. Stockpiles are so important, because if a factory ends up running into a major issue, like for example the entire assembly line has to stop, that doesn't mean that some Russian units are going to be completely deprived of munitions. You can just pull from the existing munitions you have in the giant piles out in these ammunition depots and then send that to the front instead while that problem is trying to be fixed. when you're running out of stockpiles like this is like a doomsday scenario for a lot of Russian logisticians, and they're probably trying to figure out how in the world to work the supply lines at this point, or try and sustain this ammunition so that we can actually be used on the front lines. So this is actually a pretty big deal, and they probably will run out of munitions over time, but it's not going to be incredibly soon. It most likely will still be a good while, maybe half a year or a year. We'll start to see that ammunition shortages start to become a major issue inside the Russian armed forces. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And interestingly enough, that actually moves us on. And also, I see someone say 19%. And someone said 19% interest rate? Oh my goodness, a 19% interest rate would be crazy. Oh my god, like the economy is collapsing at a 19% interest rate. But anyways, moving on from that, speaking of something that is collapsing at a pretty fast speed, Lebanon is collapsing at a pretty fast speed, interestingly enough. The Israelis have apparently had enough. And many of y'all heard yesterday that the Israelis had found out that the Lebanese, or really Hezbollah more so, were planning on conducting a preemptive attack against Israel in the coming hours, and so they decided to start conducting preemptive airstrikes against those forces on their staging areas and ammunition bases, so that way they could try and knock them out before they actually caused any real damage to Israel. And that has now continued on even stronger today than it was yesterday. An endless amount of footage has been coming out showing the Israeli Air Force using their largest bunker-busting bombs to be able to hit Hezbollah forces within southern Lebanon and try and destroy their ammunition bases, their communication hubs, their staging areas, and not only that, active combat forces or active forces in the area at the moment. We were able to get loads of videos of these airstrikes, and it is showing us that the intensity of them is quite high. Here's the first clip that shows us a mushroom cloud that's already starting to rise, and the sound of an explosion that came from that mushroom cloud. Dang!
Wow.
Man, many people are saying that Lebanon's in trouble, and I would have to say a lot of people are Lebanon off. But moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see even more targets getting hit within the southern region. This time in broad daylight. This almost looks like Afghanistan.
على مجرى نهر الليطاني مقابل منطقة الخردل.
This guy sounds like a sports analogy.
That dude, he's like the guy for the FIFA World Cup or something like that. But moving on from that, we also got to see another airstrike happening in southern. Oh, sorry, that's actually a duplicate. We're gonna delete that one because we don't have duplicates here on this channel. But we also did get to see a major munitions depot getting hit pretty hard. Check this one out. Dang! That is about as big as the one that happened down at Torapets today. And look at that shockwave!
Oh! Oh!
Whoa! Like thunder.
That almost does look nuclear a little bit. That shockwave, like, going up was wild.
Man, absolutely crazy. Gotta say. It was Lebanon, and now the Israelis have ensured that it's 11 off, and I think that it's going to stay off for quite a good while. But still, very interesting to see, and also just to let y'all know how large the airstrikes were overnight. There was a plane, and this marker was located about as accurately as we could. It's actually somewhere out here, probably even west of the coast of Cyprus when this video was made. But someone was flying economy class on a plane flying from Athens to TLV. Some people are going to be like, why in the world would you mention that they're flying economy? That's because that's like the only way to actually fly. Because if you're doing anything else, you're just paying a lot of money to get like a hot towel and sit in a slightly larger seat with like an extra inch of legroom. It's like a very negligible difference in my opinion, so why fly anything but economy? I want to listen to that baby squalling in the back of the plane for like 3 hours. Come on, y'all. I want the experience. But beyond that, we did get to see that this guy looked out the window and he was able to see the shock and awe going on just outside of his window off in Lebanon. So here's the clip. Like, I'd be damned. Those were huge explosions.
You know that's got to be very off-putting to be flying in a plane like this with the history that passenger jets have had over the Middle East, and then to see that and realize, this plane could be hit by something on the ground.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, I would be I would be up there like, excuse me, pilot, we're flying through an active war zone right now. Could you speed it up, man? Like, that is pretty crazy. Look at that. Bam. I mean, that was huge. That was massive. And you're just watching it from the window of the plane.
Was it El Al, by the way? Do we know the airline?
Sadly, we don't know. I wish we
Oh,
did.
I was about to say, if it's El Al, they have some like onboard defense systems and stuff that could like protect the plane. But if we don't know, we don't know.
Man, I'll tell you what, man. I wish we knew. Because it says it was flying from Athens to, oh, it was flying from Athens to Tel Aviv. Probably El Al, but it could have been another airline based out of Greece. We're not entirely sure. But still, a very interesting thing for that fact. They were able to see the airstrikes all the way out there. Pretty wild, as like a matter of fact. But moving on from that, we did get to see that Hezbollah is trying to strike back and is trying to conduct attacks within the northern Israel area. We were able to see that the Iron Domes were attempting to intercept as many of these as they could. We see it actually making a full 180 right there and then flying for another missile, hitting it dead on. Ooh. While the Iron Dome was successfully intercepting a large number of the rockets fired by Hezbollah overnight, some of the debris did rain down on some of the Israeli towns, for example, Nazareth right here, and we were able to see that this debris did start fires and may have possibly injured people on the ground. But this is certainly a night to remember, and many Lebanese people living in the southern area of Lebanon and a lot of Hezbollah will be asked, do you remember the 21st night of September?
Hey, sure is the 21st night of September. Look at that.
Do you remember the 21st night of September? But beyond that, I think many of them will, because they almost got obliterated on the 21st night of September. But nevertheless, a lot of people are going to be remembering the 21st night of September because it's once again the night that we're having to come around and ask, is war imminent? Because Hezbollah has attacked Israel with new rockets, like we saw just right there, and they have raised the red flags of war, something that Iran has done before earlier, and it didn't really result in anything. But a lot of people are still wondering, is war imminent? And a lot of people seem to be believing that war is still imminent within the area. And some are saying that it'll probably only be skirmishes, but it seems as though there's been a couple of camps that have popped up here. Most people think the war is imminent. Some think it's going to be skirmishes only. Matthew, what are you thinking about it, and what is everyone else thinking about it as well?
All right, so after we've seen today that Hezbollah has attacked Israel with brand new rockets that's never been used before by Hezbollah on Israeli territory, and also they raised their red flags of war, which is so intimidating to see that from Hezbollah. That was just making everyone shake in their boots. The big question is war imminent? So 68% said it is imminent, while 22% said it'll probably be only skirmishes and not war, and 4% said no, a war will not happen. So on this one, your definition of war is going to probably depend on what you pick here. So I would say they've really been at war for ages now. It may pick up in intensity, but I don't think like a quote-unquote war is starting because they're already attacking. So, what's really war at this point in the Middle East? I think it's always happening between Hezbollah and Israel. So I think it's going to continue happening, and it may get a little bit more frequent or a little bit more high intensity, but that's going to be about it. There's really not much Hezbollah can do because even the attack today, which was considered a large attack, was not that damaging to Israel in any real capacity. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say war is largely imminent. It may end up being smaller skirmishes and airstrikes. It may end up being a full-scale ground invasion of southern Lebanon, but I think it's fairly certain, no matter the best intentions of people around the world to try and stop this from happening, it is going to happen. It's an inevitability at this point, and we're practically just sitting and waiting for the moment that this will kick off entirely. I have heard, though, that Hasnoballs did raise their red flags of terror today, as they usually do, and then I heard that apparently the U.S. Navy also started to raise their own flags, Matthew, and I heard that they said, "Yar, raise the colors, boy, we're going to be getting them." Like, it's something like that.
Oh, geez, man. Did you see the Hezbollah red flags, by the way? Like, it's literally like they're like logo just on like a solid red flag. Like there's nothing really like unique about it except it turned the flag red from whatever color it was.
Man, let's see here. Wow, that's
there
it
is. That's it. Looks like it got shipped straight from Alibaba or something, the way it's folded up.
Dude, this is stupid. Like, that's literally just like the Hezbollah flag. Like, this is the normal one, and it's just in red and white.
Yeah, it's really goofy, man. This is what they raised up to intimidate Israel. They're getting ready for war now.
Oh, so intimidated. They learned about making their flag change colors or inverting the colors. Ooh, so scared. I'm gonna piss my pants over here. More like piss on their graves. Oh, beyond that. This is, yeah, that's kind of lame. I didn't expect.
You know what it reminds me of, really? It's like they're trying to go Turkish or something with this flag. It's like they've turned it red and they added the white stuff in the middle. If you took a quick glance, you might think it's Turkey's flag.
Man, honestly, man, this kind of flag right here, man, it really sings to me, Matthew. It's got that Al-Basiri, Al-Bashar, Wahmadi, you know, it's got that kind of thing going on with it, and I don't appreciate it. I feel like this is going to be the flag that ends up getting a 2,000-pound bomb slammed right on top of them, and that'll be the end of the story. So,
You know what their theme song is going to be to go with the new flag?
what will it be?
Oh, my nuts, blad! Ah!
Dude, you know, nah, man, they're gonna be sitting there. They're gonna sit there and they're gonna be going, El Basiri, Al Bashar, oh my balls! Something like that. It's gonna be horrendous, man.
Man, they raised the red flag for the red pager stains that were left on everybody's pants and stuff.
Man, let's see here. I'm trying to think of what in the world they called the Purge in the Great Purge in the Soviet Union. There was a specific night where political opponents were taken out, and I forgot what they always call it the night of something. Like in Germany, they call it the night of the long knives when Hitler took out his political opponents. I have a feeling that whatever's about to happen to Hezbollah, they're about to call it the night of lost balls, because I feel like all of them are about to lose them. Like if they haven't already lost them in the whole pager thing, it's coming around the corner, and they're not going to be losing their balls. They're probably going to be losing their everything about them. It's going to be very unfortunate.
Out of all the stuff that Israel could have done to them, I would have not have guessed they were going to castrate them. I would have not have guessed that one.
Man, I never thought that either, man. They literally sat there and kind of treated them like the dogs they are, man. They just said, oh, they're getting a little out of line, cut the nuts off. And it's like, that's it. It's like, that's what y'all did. And then they're going to go in and they're going to take care of the rest of them. So I would have to say, very interesting in a way, and we'll be seeing how Israel ends up dealing with this. But I would have to say that at this point, considering the pager attack and the preemptive airstrikes, the ball is certainly within Israel's court. Hezbollah is going to be on the back foot, so whatever happens, it's not going to be very good. So with that, I hope that well, not very good for Hezbollah, very good for Israel and also the Western world. But moving on from that, very interesting occurrences once again going on in this region, and that brings us on back up into Ukraine, because we still have a lot of news to cover inside of Ukraine itself. But before we get to that, we do have to make sure to address some questions, because we had some incredibly interesting ones tonight. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our first question of the night is going to go to Tom S., who's a channel legend who's been around for ages, and he puts in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Tom, for that very generous support. And he said, long live the LSA, and please take one from the live chat.
And long live the LSA. And I gotta say, I love to know that people have actually made that a real slogan. Like, I love to see LSAs like Richard Shaw. He just threw in an LSA in the live chat. I love to see that. I think that's incredibly cool that the LSA has actually become such a community. People yell out long live the LSA and LSA as an actual like rallying cry of the channel. I think that is the coolest thing ever. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Tom S., tonight, and throwing in a little long live the LSA, because the LSA will never die. And of course, we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor. But a massive thanks to you for the unbelievably massive support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We have said this time and time again. We say it all the time, but I always want everyone to know how appreciative we are of all of the super chatters and all of y'all's support, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we really wouldn't be here. We don't run ads or have sponsors on these streams. We don't make a cent running these things, and the only way that we're able to do this as a full-time job is thanks to folks like you. And y'all don't even have to support the channel. We really don't want people to support the channel if they can, and even if they do, it's kind of a thing that's up to y'all. And nevertheless, folks like you, Thomas, do this every single night and help us to be able to do this as a job. We've been able to completely avoid over monetizing this thing thanks to folks like you, and I got to give you a massive thanks once again, because the incredibly small number of super chatters that we have every single night compared to the amount of people who are here help to make this channel possible, not only for us to do as a job, but for everyone in the world to be able to watch as a show. These streams get about 100,000 views every single day. It's very rare that they don't get more than 100,000 views. And the 30 to 40 super chatters we get per night make this stream possible for about 100,000 people. And I got to give you such a huge thanks for being one of those people tonight, Thomas, supporting the channel massively and helping us to keep this thing rolling. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to be here for this long, and we wouldn't be able to continue to be here well on into the future. And so a huge thanks to you once again. And Matthew, let's grab that live chat.
All right, so the live chat question right here is going to go to Anonymous, and they said, how does Russia store nukes? Is it underground, or is it in silos, or something else?
That's a very interesting question. A decent amount of their intercontinental ballistic missiles are in fact stored in silos. Some of them, however, are actually stored in a very interesting way. Russia is the only country, I believe, that does this, but they actually have the Topol M, also known by its NATO call sign of Sickle B. This is, it also has sickle cell, by the way. It bleeds quite easily. But beyond that, this thing is an intercontinental ballistic carrier and launcher. This thing actually launches an intercontinental ballistic missile. There's not really a lot of these things. I think there's only like 24 of them. But they are endlessly traveling Russia. They pretty much never stop moving. And they're carrying around an ICBM on top of the truck every single place they go. At any given moment, if they're given the order, they pull off the side of the street. Sometimes they actually just set up on the highway, and they fire off the intercontinental ballistic missile if the order was ever given. This is a way that very few intercontinental ballistic missiles are stored, and it really begs the question, considering these things are almost endlessly moving, what kind of maintenance is being given to the ICBMs inside? Because I would assume that it isn't really top-notch or first-class maintenance, and considering that the thing is getting jostled around on top of a truck, I would also assume that it requires a lot more maintenance than a normal ICBM that just sits in a silo. Some of their tactical nuclear weapons that would be dropped from, say, an aircraft, like for a MiG-31K, for example, being fired from a Kinzhal, those are actually stored in fairly conventional ammunition storage, so scarily enough, they could actually be in an ammunition storage facility like this. We wouldn't know where they are, but they could be in a facility just like this one. The thing is, though, is that, of course, they're not armed, so if they ever were in an explosion, they would end up probably just getting obliterated in the blast. They would spread a little bit of radioactivity and radioactive material, and that would be about it. Or it could be flung from the explosion intact and just go flying off into Nowheresville in the middle of a forest, and then the Russians don't really know where it is, and they have to go and launch a giant search for it, and even still, they may not end up finding it, especially if it buried itself deep in ground on impact. So going off of that, I hope that kind of addresses that somewhat well. Intermediate range nuclear warheads are stored almost the same way. For example, with the Iskander and other missiles like that, they are pretty much stored inside of ammunition depots like this. So there is a chance that when Ukraine is hitting these facilities, they may end up flinging or destroying a couple of nuclear warheads around the surrounding area, although that's really not that much of a risk. And if the Russians are stupid enough to have those armed while they're sitting in the middle of a depot and they blow up, that's on them. And luckily, it didn't end up blowing up anywhere else but inside of Russia. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, at least on the knowledge I would know about how they're storing nuclear weapons. But the Russians really aren't that public about that kind of stuff, although they have to disclose all of their nuclear warheads and where they are. I wouldn't know exactly where the tactical nuclear warheads and the intermediate range nuclear warheads would be, but we do have a pretty good idea on where the ICBMs are, because their positions are pretty much fixed in place and permanent unless if it's a Topol M. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much once again for that massive support, John S., and helping this channel to keep on running. Well, actually, Tom S., sorry about that, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. Also, it is Tom S., and so thank you once again. I had to make sure, I had to double check on that one. But with that, we are on to the next one, and a huge thanks to you once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here is going to go to BC Skyman, the channel legend, and he returned after we
Hey!
returned from our vacation, and he threw in a massive $100 donation. And thank you very much, BC, for that support as well. The second largest one of the night. Well, actually, you're actually tied with Tom, actually, not the second, so you're tied with Tom. But thank you very much, BC, for that very generous support. He said, I'm glad the enforcers are back from vacation, and a chat question, please.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, BC Scammon, and thank you for welcoming us back. We were wondering where you were. Like, we actually were talking about that tonight. We were like, man, where's BC Scammon? We came back and he hasn't been here. And you're back. It was literally like right as we said that you showed up. We were like, no way, he's here. And I gotta say, welcome back. I'm glad to have you back. And the vacation was great. Not to talk about it too much. We actually did throw up some pictures, though, on the streams. We rode a train. We actually rode the Coast Starlight from LA to Seattle. Here's the locomotive, the lead locomotive right there on screen. Really cool. I love the ALC 42 Chargers. I think they're incredibly neat. The trip was fun. Matthew ended up getting a little bit of a bug, and now the plague is spreading, actually, amongst the rest of everyone. So now I think... Mama and Pops both have it as well, so not a great ordeal. But beyond that,
It's kind of I think it's the whirly bird. I hate to say it, but I think it is the whirly bird. Luckily though, I'm able to still function during this one. Not at full capacity though. I'm like at 75% like normal energy, but I'm still here. Thankfully, it's not that bad.
and thankfully Matthew is still here. I haven't gotten it yet. Everyone else has gotten it at this point. I don't know if I'm going to get it or if it's going to be really delayed. I'm probably going to get it. And it's just going to end up being delayed compared to everyone else. So that is kind of an interesting fact. But beyond that, though, the train was incredibly fun. We loved it. We got to see a lot of cities. Specifically, we got to see a pretty good bit of LA and also Seattle. And I got to say, LA was pretty interesting. It had some bad places, but it also had some wildly nice places. And Seattle, interestingly enough, because we got thrown out on the train in the middle of downtown, to show y'all where the station is, this is King Street Station, which is their version of a Union Station in Seattle right here, which is literally smack dab in the middle of downtown, because there's downtown right there. And downtown Seattle was wildly nice. I was really impressed with it. I thought it was really cool. And one day I hope to go back to Seattle and get to take a better look at the place, because it was just that nice and it was really neat. So a big shout out to all of our Seattle viewers. You all have a really neat downtown. It was really pretty, and I also loved y'all's train station. I actually think that that the King Street station is better looking, in my opinion, now than the one that we saw down in LA at LA Union Station, which had the Mission Revival style. Also, here's the Union Station across the street, which was also a part of the King Street Station at a time. Sadly, it's not anymore. I think there's a road splitting them down the middle. But still pretty cool that they actually kind of repurposed it and still use it in a way. But I still like the station overall. I think it's an incredibly neat one, very pretty. It's built around 1906. Overall, not a bad one. And I would certainly
We
go...
had so many people from Seattle like contact us like over email and messages and stuff like that, telling us that we should go back to Seattle and take a closer look at it, because we were only able to look around the thing for like a couple of hours, and it was like very, very nice based on what we saw. We walked down to like Pier 55 or something like that. It was over there near the Pike Place little spot, sort of near the pier. There was like a Starbucks near it. I think it was somewhere around here. There was a Ferris wheel right there or something. Let's see, spin around here. I think there's the Ferris wheel. We walked past the Miners Landing thing, and then there was another pier down there. Seattle is very nice. Like I've heard like bad things about Seattle, but it was nice here. I didn't get to look at the other part of the city. There's probably is a bad part, just like any other city in the country. But I like the mix of water, big city, and also like the mountains in the distance. A very unique place.
And I'll have to say this, really, like, this is kind of my take on American cities, because I don't know if they were emailing us, Matthew, and saying, hey, check it out, there's actually a lot worse places, you only saw the nice part, or if they were like, you know, there's a lot nicer parts and you need to go check them out. I'm not really sure what they were saying, because I didn't get to see those. But here's kind of my take on American cities. All American cities are about the same. They all have really nice places in them, and they also have really bad places in them. Because every single city is the social pyramid. You're going to have the bottom rung, you're going to have the top rung in every single city. It's just kind of different on how bad the bad gets and how good the good gets. Like, to be honest with y'all, in my opinion, LA was the extremes on both ends. It had the nicest of the nice and it had the worst of the worst. That was really what I took away from LA, and that seems to make a lot of sense. It's a very big city, so you would end up probably getting the most extremes on both ends. You would end up having the nicest of nicest places that you see, like Beverly Hills and Santa Monica, which I can't lie were like some of the nicest places I had ever seen. But then you also have places like West LA and also on top of that Hollywood, which are some of the places that I've seen, at least as far as a tourist area, that is some of the worst for a tourist location. And then that led me to wonder, how bad does it really get in places like Skid Row, where it has to be absolutely horrendous? Like, does the Google Street View even go through Skid Row? It does, and it looks doesn't look that bad. Well, actually, it does look pretty bad on the street. Yeah, that's pretty horrendous. And you see, it's just how it works. It's a major city, so you're going to have the worst of the worst and the best of the best all in one city. Because Birmingham, Alabama is just like that. I bet Seattle is like that if we were able to wander around a little bit. But one city I will exclude from that rule is Portland, Oregon. I just feel like that entire city was the worst of the worst. We rode in on the train, and I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, you know, you don't always see the nicest places from the train because usually the bad parts of town are around the tracks because no one wants to deal with the noise. But the truth is that we actually saw a lot of really nice places on the train. Like, the train in most places in the West Coast actually went through some of the nicest parts of town, like coming in and out of them. And so Portland was actually a shock because instead of coming into a town and getting a really cool look at their city streets and going, wow, this is really beautiful, maybe we ought to be able to check out this town another time when we come out here. Portland was literally hell from the moment we entered Oregon City down here. Like, as soon as we exited Oregon City and made our way into Portland, I was like, wow, this place is pretty rough. Like, it never got better. It looked bad throughout the whole thing. And on top of that, the Union Station in Portland, which you can tell a lot about a city on how they keep up their Union Station. Their Union Station was horrendous. Like, the paint was chipping off of everything, and nothing had been renovated in at least 60 years, which was really shocking to me because it's actually an Amtrak-operated train station, and that was kind of telling me that Portland probably wasn't that nice because they couldn't even take the time to keep up their train station, unlike Seattle, which had a absolutely amazing train station, in LA, which had a really good and well-kept-up train station. Portland didn't, and that kind of was another thing that was a strike against it, because if the train station's bad and it's a major transport hub, at least for American transportation terms in the city, the rest of the city can't really be that nice. So Portland is the only city I would say really breaks the norm, and it's a little concerning how it did. But beyond that, every other city had great places, probably had questionable places if we didn't see them. But beyond that, it wasn't a bad place at all. But still, I gotta say, a huge thanks for the support once again and helping this channel to keep on running BC Scamming. It was a wonderful vacation. I gotta thank you so much for being one of the old guards, the channel legends that were really spearheading the push for us to take this vacation, because it was certainly a well-needed one. And I really enjoyed it. It was incredible. It was very interesting. And I really enjoyed it a great deal. And so with that, thank you so much. Also, one more thing I got to say, because you see some people saying this, like there's homeless in Seattle and there's homeless in LA. There are homeless people in Birmingham, Alabama. There's also homeless people in Montgomery, Alabama, and also many other cities here in Alabama. Homeless people are just kind of a bit of a norm that I've kind of come to the conclusion of. I don't really think it's a great norm, though. It's one that I would have to say needs to be fixed, because you can go to different areas and the amount of homeless people can be insanely high or kind of a little bit average. And average isn't really that good either, because to be honest with you, I don't really see a place in America anymore where there just isn't homeless people, or there's a very low number of them. There's usually a pretty...
I would say Alabama doesn't really have many homeless like people in it. Like, there are like some homeless in Birmingham, there are some in Montgomery, but it's not as like bad as it was on the West Coast. But the catch is, though, while there aren't as many homeless people in Alabama and it is a little bit cleaner, there are trade-offs, some pretty big ones. Like, for example, there's not a lot of public facilities in Alabama like there are out on the West Coast. Like, one thing I found interesting was there was like parks to go sit at and also a place you can go walk. And it was actually nice to go walk around. It wasn't very dangerous. And we really don't have that in Alabama. So there's trade-offs to pretty much every place you go. Like, there's never going to be a perfect place. It's basically pick the place that you think you can tolerate the most based on the cons and the best pros that probably fit whatever you're looking for. And that's the best place to live. But Alabama's got different problems, even though it is cleaner.
Yeah, every place has its problems. They're just different. And also, I'm seeing some people, once again, no politics, folks, because I'm seeing a lot of people throwing in political opinions about why cities are bad, certain ones, and other ones are better. I'll be honest with you. In our travels, I have not seen a city that's been managed properly, a bigger one, as far as how it goes. Just to say it as it is, so that way I can try and get the message across a little bit more clearly. Once again, I'm not breaking the politics rule here because I'm equally condemning both sides. This is within the no politics rule. I've been through, Matthew and me have actually, through the years, been through Republican and Democrat run cities, and I'll be honest with you, I don't really see a difference in them. There is about the same amount of homelessness, and there's about the same amount of somewhat undesirable elements in both. I haven't really seen a change. And so that's why when people say, oh, it's because of a certain kind of a leadership in this one city that's bad, I would generally have to disagree. I think it's just poor management across the board, and a lot of people who are in charge of the cities really don't understand how to run it or really how to deal with the situation. The situation.
It's just so hard to run such a big city, though. Like most of the places you'll see, like I'm not trying not to get political here, but rural cities are a lot easier to manage than a major city like Los Angeles. That's common sense. But really, though, like no matter what the political party is that's in charge, it's going to be a challenge to clean up Los Angeles. Like it's going to be a huge challenge that's going to require a lot of people to really put their heads together and fix it. And it doesn't matter really what political party they're from. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's not going to be overnight. So to me, it's not so much about the political party that's in there. It's about the amount of work they're willing to put in, and also are the people actually, going to put in the effort. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, that really is a good part of it. On top of that, another thing that isn't really spoken about much is that a lot of cities like to try and trim down their bureaucracy, most times to detriment. Really, everyone does it. For example, a lot of cities don't really have a working department of sanitation anymore. Birmingham is certainly an example of that. Streets are not really kept up well, and they're not really clean. Parks aren't really that clean. It's really done at a bare minimum if it's done at all, and that is a major failing, in my opinion, of the city of Birmingham. A city's main priority is to make sure that a city is attractive for businesses and attractive for people to live in. The city really works as a corporation. That's historically how they've always worked in British-based countries. The city is, in fact, a corporation. It's an entity of its own. And its business is to attract people here and to keep people here by making sure that it's nice and that it looks good and that it's conducive for business. And I feel like a lot of cities have really lost that, and they don't really focus on those things, like making sure to replace the waterworks here and there to make sure that certain facilities in the waterworks are top notch, or to try and improve them as best as possible, to even try and break the minimum federal and state thresholds that are put out. That should be a priority of a city. A city should also have a priority of maintaining municipal roadways to the highest standards that they can across the board, depending on where it is. Roadways and the cleanliness of those roadways can largely dictate property values, and not only that, can largely dictate the kind of cleanliness that you'll see on the surrounding properties, because it's kind of working off of a broken window theory. If you see a really nice street, you're probably going to be a little bit more inclined to keep up your own house and your own yard. Some people may not. Those people are a little bit stupid, probably brain dead, but most people would keep up their yards a little bit better. On top of that, you want to be able to try and make it look nice enough that a business would go, we would be able to retain employees here and not really get a lot of complaints from them. And on top of that, it seems as though the labor force here looks pretty nice because the city's pretty decent. And not only that, they're giving us some pretty good incentives, so we'll move to the city. That's how cities are supposed to run. No one runs them like that anymore. People just run them where they get in the position pushing federal agendas, which make no sense. Because it's like I'll be honest with y'all, on a municipal level, why does it matter that your mayor is a Republican or a Democrat? Like, does that even matter? Because they're not even really weighing in on the kind of national decisions that would be made by those parties in Congress. Like, the municipalities have really nothing to do with that at all. So why in the world does it matter what position they have? They ought to have good stances and strong positions to improve their municipality, and that really has almost nothing to do with major political agendas inside the United States. But you don't really see that a lot. So, once again, making sure not to break the no politics rule and talk about this fairly on both sides, I feel like that's a pretty big failing in most cities, is a lack of bureaucracy and mismanagement, which usually leads to cities being very questionable in their quality, largely across the board, even in somewhat nicer areas. However, I will make the caveat, Beverly Hills and Santa Monica were run like machines. Like, they were incredibly nice, very well kept up, incredibly clean. The streets looked nice, everything was nice. It was very expensive, though, but it was incredibly nice, and you could clearly tell that they had insanely good bureaucracies in Beverly Hills and Santa Monica because things were being upkept to about tip-top shape, which is about the
You
best
know,
you
a
can
good
expect.
idea. A good idea to fix the homeless problem out, like for example, in a place like Los Angeles, and this might be controversial, but just hear me out. If you, for example, were able to give out like free housing, and I know people don't like the idea of free housing because it has its own little strings attached and stuff like that. But the caveat is you get to help work with the city, for example, like public sanitation, things like that. You can basically work for the free housing by helping the city like clean it up and also clean the streets and things like that. And also, for example, there are some homeless people out there that do have some mental afflictions. They can also get the mental help that they need while they're also working for the city. So it's like a kickstart. And the goal is not for them to get stuck in the free housing, but to eventually move on from it after they've gotten out of the bad fix that they're in. That would seem to be like a pretty good thing. And I can already hear some people saying it. They're going to say, well, that sounds like indentured servitude or something like that. Like you're forcing them to work like a slave to get the free housing. That's not the way I see it, because the free housing can't be just free because someone's having to pay for it. So the way they're paying back, per se, is to help the city out by cleaning up. That seems like a really good way to do it.
Honestly, that sounds like a pretty good way to do it. I would add a caveat to that. I would get them to work largely as the labor force of certain city departments, like just throw a large amount of them into the Department of Sanitation and tell them get back out there on the streets, but with a broom and a dustpan, and go clean up the streets, make sure that they're always clean, something along those lines, or throw them into other city departments that could use them. That would be a pretty good thing to do, because not only are you bolstering the city's bureaucracy that way and also helping out some of the municipal institutions, you're also getting these people off the streets and giving them a purpose, a thing to do, and a thing to help improve the city, and hopefully eventually move on from that. And of course, they'll be paid, they'll get housing, everything in the meantime. Which, honestly, that's not a bad trade. I mean, that's actually a pretty good idea. To me, it's a win-win. It gets them off the streets, gives them some housing, a good bit of pay, so that way they can go get some food. And not only that, it's
That's
helping
a
to improve the
solid
municipality.
trade. That's a solid trade because the cost of housing in Los Angeles is insane. So that value alone, like at least 3,000 plus a month right there that's being given to them for free. And also the city could reduce the size of their like sanitation department if they had a lot of involvement from people that were homeless that wanted to sign up and apply for the program. They could reduce their size and reduce their costs on that front by just simply having them, who's using the free housing, help the city out in return. And that would save the city money on that front as well. That'd actually be a very good idea. And also, like I saw some folks saying that the homeless folks like to refuse stuff if it has any conditions attached to it. I mean, that's probably true. Like, I'm not going to deny that. There probably are some that would rather be on the street. And to me, that would indicate maybe mental health issues of some sort, which is unfortunate. But I think a part of the free housing should be like access to that mental health, like maybe make that a requirement to go to those things, because like I think that would be a huge like help if they could simply get to like some mental like facility or something like that where they could get I guess better, if that's the word for it, to try to get them kickstarted. Because if they get out of that rut, that would be a huge difference being made in that city.
I would agree. And also, some people are saying, well, maybe they don't want to do it. I would have to say this doesn't ever sound great, and this is why a lot of people don't ever want to say this. The city must go on, and the city cannot be dragged down by people who do not want to be helped. So if they do not want to be helped, then they have to go. Like, it doesn't matter where they go, but they're not going to be in the city, because they can't drag down the entire city and its institution for everyone just because they want to sit out on the street and do nothing all day, but scare people and generally be a bit of a nuisance. That would generally be the way I would work it. That sounds kind of a bit some people would say that's a bit cruel. It probably is, but at the same time, life is a little bit cruel, and you can't end up having everyone in the damn city being dragged down because you sit there and give someone a viable alternative to get off the street and to improve their lot, and then they just go, no, I want to sit on the street and, scare people. It's like, No, that's not going to happen. That
Well, it's
would.
like if someone was given an option, like for example, let's say it's a homeless person that has a mental affliction and that they committed a crime, like for example, assaulting someone or something like that, because that does happen. If they were given the option, you can go work for the city and get a free house or a free apartment or something like that to house them, but you have to go to these mental health classes, or you can go to jail. Like, which one do you want? I don't think they're going to pick jail unless they're legitimately that crazy. They're probably not going to pick jail. And also, jail's not going to help them. It's not going to fix their mental problems. So you will punish them. They will be punished for it, and they'll get that treatment. But when they get right back out, they're going to do the same thing again. They're going to end up right back in jail. That's costing the taxpayer tons of money to put them in jail instead of trying to actually fix the problem, which is the mental health affliction. So it's just like addressing the root cause of the problem instead of like just punishing, because obviously they would have to get punished for committing a crime, but you're not addressing the root cause.
Yeah, I would have to agree that that's. I would say if I had to run a municipality like LA, which is an insanely massive undertaking, like running a metropolitan area like LA is truly insane, especially on the scale of it. But if I had to run it, we would introduce some sort of a program like that, an incentivized program for the homeless. Put them to work in the city's bureaucracies. They'll of course get pay, and they'll also get housing at the same time. Pretty good deal for them. Pretty good deal for the city at the same time. Also introduce some sort of mental health institutions to try and deal with the mental health side of things, because some people can downplay that or not. Some people actually do have some pretty big mental issues, and that's kind of why they end up on the streets. So there will be that. And then if they don't want to go down the mental health institution route, and they also don't want to go through the route of working for the city, then the last option, since they're unhelpable or just don't want to be helped and like living on the street, is that they'll have to be sent somewhere else, really pushed out of the city. Because either you can get help. I mean, the city is being compassionate in its own right by giving the chance to say, we will help you, improve your situation either through the mental health way, or giving you a job and some money to get off the street and hopefully get back to living a life, an actual productive life for the city and the nation. If you decide to spit in the face of the city and everyone living in it by not taking one of those two options, then the city will find a way to get you out of there and send you off somewhere else, either make you some other city's problem or just get you out of the city, one way or the other. So
Sadly, I think that the idea sounds good. I'm sure I'm not the first one to come up with that idea. I'm sure someone else has probably brought it up as well. Because it's not like a groundbreaking plan or anything like that. It's kind of like just straightforward, really, in my opinion. You'd probably get sued by every watchdog group around the country if you tried to implement that, because it would probably infringe on someone's rights somewhere or another. And it may or may not, but it's just a possibility to address the problem. Is clearly whatever is going on there is not working. So another solution is needed. So, the solution of leaving people on the street with mental health issues and hoping that they get better, that's never going to work.
yeah, hopefully it would work. You're probably right though. Everyone and their dog would come out to sue the city if you tried to do something like that, and then you would end up getting embroiled in legal battles forever to really end up doing nothing. And that's the great thing about America, isn't it? People can just come out of the woodwork and sue the city, and then you end up getting nothing done, nothing improves, and the situation ends up still being as rough as it was initially. But anyways, with that, I feel like we covered that fairly well, at least the best we can. But still, a huge thanks to you once again for support, BC Skyman. And also, Matthew, did we get a live chat question?
Let's see. I don't think we did.
And so we will grab that really quickly. And so what do we got in honor of BC Skyman?
So the live chat question sponsored by BC goes to Tommy, who says, how many Satan II missiles does Russia have?
Let's see, Satan II missiles. I'll have to actually pull that one up. The Sarmat. And so let's see here. According to the information I can find online, they have a limited number. It seems as though it's just a little over 10 and a little under 20. So it's somewhere around maybe 14 to 16 Sarmat missiles. It's not an incredibly high number, but it's still a bit to be worried about, considering that the Sarmat can actually fly all the way around the world over the South Pole, which we have no detection system set up to be able to see those missiles coming in. Interestingly enough, our entire relay is faced towards the North Pole, not towards the South Pole. So if anything flew over the South Pole towards us, we would not know about it until it actually hit us. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least on the information I would know. And thank you once again, BC Scammer, for sponsoring it live chat and helping us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, this incredibly long question segment, and then we're going to be getting back into the news.
And this one goes to Purple Gerbil, who's also a channel legend, who throws in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that support as well. And they said, welcome back. And do you think that if Turkey gets too silly, that some alliance would take the Dardanelles to protect Eastern NATO assets in the Black Sea?
That's an interesting question. They may end up trying to take the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, which is really the passage through this area and the Sea of Marmara. But I would say they probably wouldn't, because that would usually be a violation of national sovereignty, especially also trying to hold down an area like Istanbul, which is on the Bosphorus. That would be pretty hard to pull off in actual practice. So I would highly doubt that such a thing would happen. I would generally expect that NATO would try and find a way to just block off the Aegean Sea for the Black Sea Fleet to be able to travel up and down. That's what I would think would have really happened in the end, the most practical outcome. But we could see that maybe NATO would try and enforce some sort of a special caveat with the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, where they could actually shut down access to it for the Russians, even though Turkey wouldn't want them to. And so with that, I hope that does kind of address that question the best I can. Usually everyone's against taking away land from another nation. That's usually considered a violation of sovereignty, even if it is for a pretty good reason. And NATO largely avoids violations of sovereignty like that, unless if it's something that is considered to be of utmost security importance, like, for example, Iraq possibly producing weapons of mass destruction, or other conflicts like Korea. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And that's a huge thanks to you once again for support, Purple Gerbil, at helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this channel possible for so long. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that was a good answer to that question. With that, we are now moving on into Ukraine and our location unknowns, which we actually have a very interesting one here. The Russian casualty report. That's the only one of the day, and it was good.
Oh, we got 10 Bobcats today. That's what I love to see. 3,125. A nice round figure. And also, I see Kylo Ren down there yelling more. What's that guy's real name, though?
Let's see.
It's Keanu Reeves. No, not that guy. I'm talking the guy in the meme. That's Keanu Reeves down there yelling more. But anyways,
dude, that's not Keanu Reeves, dude. That is not Keanu Reeves. I don't know who that guy is, but that is not Keanu Reeves.
That's Kylo Ren.
Yeah, that's Kylo Ren, but that's not Keanu Reeves, dude. I promise you. I forgot the name of this guy, but he was in the Marines, and then he ended up like breaking his back.
Oh, Adam Driver. That's who it is.
Yeah, Adam Driver, not Keanu Reeves. People are going to be flaming us for that. We're going to end up getting the Swifties on us for that one. But beyond that, man, you ever heard of a Swiftie, man? Those people are violent, man.
Man, I hadn't heard of them.
Man,
I don't know if I want to know.
Yeah, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. I promise you that. But 1,440 troops have ended up being obliterated in the past 24 hours, along with 38 APCs, 68 supply trucks, 21 main battle tanks, 58 artillery pieces, 92 drones, 4 MLRSs, and 10 Bobcat skid steers. Today was an incredible day, and many Russians will remember the 21st night of September. Do you remember the 21st night of September? But moving on from that and down into Vovchans, we also got to see the Azov unit conducting an interception of enemy drones while playing Dubstep Trap Remix. And we can see the drone right there. It is a Zala, and they're about to be slamming that thing. Hey, suddenly remember, and they got it. They hit it. And we see them now getting a Shrek, and we can see them now getting an Orlan. I know the Orlan.
You know, it'd be nice if they could, like, attach a rope, like, from this drone right here and, like, lasso this other drone and, like, pull it down with it, and I'd take it back to base.
Man, that would be nice, man. Just, like, throw a net around the thing and just, like, drag it back. But instead, they just blow them up these days. I guess they looked at them enough.
I guess so.
Oh man, you know that's how it is, Jacob Clark. you'll have the YouTube Star Wars Explained fans trying to cancel you. Someone is always coming out of the woodworks trying to say some stupid stuff like we're supposed to know everything. Like I just sit there and say something about Sanguinius from Warhammer 40k, and the 40k people will come out of the woodwork and be like, Enforcer's an idiot. It's like, I can't know everything, okay? It's like, I'm going to get something wrong because I'm literally like recounting this stuff off the top of my head in the middle of a show. Like, some of the stuff will be wrong. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, a little bit further on down the line, we did get to see that down here in the area around Lebanon, they were hitting the Russians really heavily. Check it out. Oh, Chad music ensues, and we also got a little raccoon right there.
That was a honey badger.
Man, and we can see the Ukrainian BMP. And we can see the Ukrainians hopping out of their BMP. The Russians are right in the trees. They're in the trees! Bam! Like, it's something like that.
It's an old-fashioned gunfight on this zigzag trench right here that the Russians pitifully dug.
Oh my goodness! And then they just went to greasing the whole place. Also, thank you, Mestiza, for including the records report in the live chat. That was incredibly nice of you. We appreciate it. Dang! Hello there. How do you do?
I was fighting to get to the mute button. I couldn't get to it in time.
I was like, dang, man.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, goodness. Above beyond that, we can see them continuing to slam the Russians down there. The Ukrainians are in the trench, and they're really giving them the works. And that's the end of that clip, but pretty nice to see the Ukrainians getting to work on those Russians in that area. Hopefully knocking them around a little bit. Meanwhile, we also get to see some combat footage from Tigettes. I remember that this one did have music. I'll let y'all hear it for a split second. I'm sorry, I cracked on the last part. But anyways, we can see him walking out there with the RPG. I actually saw a guy get his head taken off today by an RPG. That was a pretty rough one. But we can see him firing it through the city block right there. And there it goes. Oh! And like a point-blank explosion, a dead-on hit.
Oh, solo mio.
We now see them riding in the back of their MRAP here. The Ukrainian police are out there policing the streets and also detaining Russians only for a moment. We can now see them handing out the heavy weapons here.
Look at that creature on the wall. What was that, a Pikachu?
I have no idea. Let's go back and look at that again. Bro, I don't know what the hell that thing is.
That's a stone bunny.
Bro, is that a furry? What is that?
Whoa.
Miguel said, Link? Link, you want to see someone get their head taken off by an RPG? Nah, you don't want to see that. I promise you. Like, everyone's always morbidly curious about that kind of stuff, but even after I've seen it for 3 years now, and I've really gotten kind of like, let's see how to describe it, immune to really, desensitized. I know it's still pretty nasty stuff. You wouldn't want to normally see that, like, in just a normal sitting, you know? And they are just slamming this building with RPGs. Boom! Just hitting it dead on the nail. And you know that bunny on the wall, y'all, is that rabbit from Watership Down. Y'all remember that movie? Y'all remember that one where the rats got impaled on the thorn bush? And it was a children's movie? Like, that was one hell of a messed up children's movie right there. I think those people... There it is! There's the bunny! Bam! And they just keep on laying it down. Boom. They're sending the
A
Russians up
Russian
to...
just got his wings.
Man, it's going to be like that Ballad of Buster Scruggs song when a cowboy trades his spurs for wings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Buster Scruggs. I remember him.
Man, that was a pretty funny movie, man, honestly. But then it got dark. Like, it got real dark, like, real quick. It's like, this was supposed to be a comedy, but then they just turned it into a straight-up, like, horror movie almost. But anyways...
tragedy.
Man, and like dude, they threw that legless, armless guy into the river and just drowned him like that, man. Like, no hesitation. It's like, that was just so cruel. But anyways, moving on from that and down towards Fredivka, we also got to see a Bradley saving its crew from 2 Hornets hits. There's our Bradley right here. The Russians are about to try and take it out, but the Bradley is stronger than that. It's just made of stronger stuff. So there goes the Hornets. And blip, and it hits, but it doesn't really do anything. The Bradley just keeps going. The Bradley is Chad-like. I don't even think a Leopard would survive a hit like that, but the Bradley does somehow. They hit it again, and you just wouldn't believe it. It's still trucking on along. I mean, it's literally unfazed. We can see some artillery fire coming in now. The crew is now bailing out. The vehicle ended up taking the hit, largely being unfazed, but once again damaged enough the crew doesn't want to stay in it any longer. And now the Bradley has been abandoned in the field, and artillery is landing around and not even really getting close to hitting it exactly. Actually, in fact, it looks like the Russians almost got hit by their own shell right there at the end of the clip. As you can see, some pretty nearby shrapnel and explosion right there coming from a Russian artillery shell. So it almost looks like the ATGM guys got killed by their own artillery. Pretty fun for them. Not fun for anyone else, I suppose. But moving on from that and down to Volodar, we also got to see the 72nd Brigade making sure to lay down some work. And we see the drone coming in here. Baboosh! It hitting him right on the engine bay. And bam! Hitting that BTR-80. Damn, son, where'd you find this? Have you ever wanted to see your Russian tank get blown up in full glory right before your very eyes? Well, then you, my friend, need to check out the 72nd Brigade, or otherwise known as the Okrima Brigada. This brigade is beating the ass of the Russians around Volodar like there's never been seen before. Watch them sit there and beat on that ass like Diddy. Going to absolute work.
Oh.
Knock them around a little bit.
He likes to party.
You gotta tell him
no.
Like, oh, man. But we can see them here just continuously blowing up Russian vehicles all over the place. Tough year for Russians. I guess you could say that they woke up in the morning and they really felt like P. Diddy. He likes to party, you gotta tell him no. That's like the only thing I paid attention to in like the modern pop culture media thing. It's the whole Diddy thing. So get ready for some Diddy jokes over like the next week or two, because that's the only thing I got to work with right now. But we can see here.
Nobody ever questioned how he got the name Diddy. Like, nobody ever questioned that. Like, when I don't even know who the guy was. I was like, Diddy. I'm like, that sounds like someone that could be a little bit worrisome around someone's children or something. I'm not sure if I'd trust anybody named Diddy.
Man, I wouldn't trust him, and I wouldn't trust anyone with like a Dr. Disrespect kind of like a mustache thing going on, you know? Like, neither of those would I trust. And you know, man, there's someone out there with a kind of a thing going on like that, someone who likes hot dogs. But anyways, check this out. Bam! The 72nd is blowing away BMPs.
Someone said he used to be called Puff Daddy before that. That's even worse, really. Like, he went from a little bit sus to really sus with the name Diddy.
Dude, he was pretty much on the nose like the whole time, and no one even questioned it. It's like, should this guy even be like in the music industry? It's like, maybe he'd be more fitting in another industry or something, you know? Like, but not this one. But anyways, that BMP right there got slammed, and I think the crew's having a bad time inside. Really didn't make their day. But moving on down to Huilopol, we also get to see the Russians getting hit by some daytime FPVs as opposed to nighttime FPVs, which are a different breed. And there's the Russians just wandering around in the shrubbery. Oh my lord, Zane came in and said, 5 nights at Diddy's. Goodness gracious. Like, no, I don't think anyone would survive 5 nights at Diddy's. Like, I think everyone would be dead by then. Or,
he done Diddy.
Or extremely traumatized. Dude, have you heard the, like, hey Siri, did Diddy do it? And it's like, if Diddy did done what Diddy did do, like, it was something like that. It was the funniest thing ever, man.
That's crazy. It's Diddy.
Man. Oh, those carp. Oh, that Diddy. Like,
so you're telling me that all the gangster rappers, the gangsters, tough guys, they all had to meet with Diddy to get that thing signed up?
Man, I'm telling you, man, that's a rough one. Apparently, from what I was seeing today, I don't know why, but like, did you see that Justin Bieber was like blowing up on our main page when you get on Twitter today? Like, it was the only thing on the Twitter page when I got onto it, and I had to go to our profile to start like working. I was like, oh, that was a very direct message right there at the end of that clip.
Oh.
But anyways, like, apparently Justin Bieber, at least according to the rumors, of course they're rumors, and you know how celebrity rumors work, it could be nothing. But apparently, from like video footage of like Diddy talking to Justin Bieber, like when he was like 15, was like super, super uncomfortable around him. And Diddy was like, hey, you used to hang out with me a lot. Why don't you hang out anymore? And I was like, this is whack. Like, if what's being insinuated was legit, that's pretty whack right there. But anyways,
he's not the only one. I think if you're a young star in like the like Hollywood like scene or something like that, you're going to be in for probably a life of like mental torment after you go through what you're going to go through. Being a young like child in that type of sick world like that, you're probably going to get put through the ringer.
Probably so. Probably just for the hell of the power trip, honestly, because that's how a lot of people, you know, exist. Especially when you're talking about people who are pretty egotistical in the first place, which a lot of people in that industry are. A lot of them are going to end up doing stuff, not because, like this is kind of the thing that people don't get. It's not exactly for the pleasure of doing something like that. It's really just for the fact that you have the power over them to be able to do something like that. So it's not really like the kind of like a sick, sadistic thing that a lot of people would think. It's more like the Roman Empire, Roman Republic kind of a display of power that it ends up being, more so than anything. Pretty messed up either way. I honestly think it's more messed up if you're just doing it just so you can show you have the power over someone. But still, it's insanely messed up either way, almost about the same. But for some reason, it being a power trip when someone does that, that comes off a lot worse to me than someone just doing it because they want to, you know, if you get what I'm saying. But anyways, moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, it is time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 21st night of September. And boy, howdy, does he remember the 21st night of September. And so without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні знову варто відзначити наших воїнів за влучність. Влучність саме на території ворога. Це те, що змінює ситуацію принципово. Наша здатність повертати війну додому в Росію. Є чергове ураження арсеналу в Росії, і це був значний арсенал для окупанта. Всі наші воїни Сил оборони та безпеки України, які були задіяні. Дякую вам. Збройні Сили України, Служба безпеки України і усі, хто залучався. Молодці. Також є хороша робота СБУ по ще одному арсеналу російських військ. Це були сховища російських тактичних ракет та керованих авіабомб. Все те, що Росія використовує для терору проти наших міст, наших позицій. Я хочу підкреслити, ми це робимо завдяки нашим спроможностям, нашій зброї, без тих засобів, які можуть надати партнери, які можуть значно прискорити завершення цієї війни, завдяки знищенню російського наступального потенціалу. Якби ми могли всю нашу влучність спрямувати для захисту нашої держави, якби для цього було достатньо ракет і дозволів, які можуть надати партнери, ситуація загалом у війні була би значно краще для нашої безпеки, для безпеки України і всіх в світі, хто не хоче існувати в умовах таких агресій, як ця російська. Ми переконуємо партнерів і продовжимо говорити про це наступного тижня, що Україні потрібна повноцінна далекобійність. І не лише наші власні дрони, не лише наші власні ракети, які поки не мають достатньої дальності, але й усе те, чим світ може бути убезпечений від терору від Росії. Сьогодні окремо відзначу наш Центр спецоперацій А, Служба безпеки України. Молодці воїни! Також я дякую кожному підрозділу, кожному солдату, сержанту, офіцеру, які воюють на території ворога в Курській області Росії. Наші активні дії там саме так впливають на фронтову ситуацію, як ми зараз в Україні цього потребуємо. І, звичайно, фронт, наші бойові бригади. Покровський напрямок, Курахівський та всі напрямки на Донеччині, наша Харківщина, наше Запоріжжя, увесь південь. Я хочу подякувати кожному за стійкість. Особливо за цей тиждень варто відзначити 46-ту окрему аеромобільну бригаду, 68-му єгерську імені Довбуша та 425-й окремий штурмовий батальйон. Дякую вам за хоробрість. І саме на Покровському напрямку, Оріхівський напрямок, 65-та окрема механізована бригада, Придніпровський, 35-та окрема бригада морської піхоти. Я дякую вам. Дякую усім, хто б'ється заради України, і усім, хто допомагає нам захищати життя. Наступний тиждень може стати багато в чому визначальним для того, щоб зупинити російський терор, цю агресію, і щоб повернути нормальну безпеку. Щоб це сталося, рішучість наших партнерів має відповідати сміливості українців. Відповідь на питання, коли завершиться ця війна, насправді в тому, коли рішучість партнерів не відставатиме від того, що ми можемо робити для нашого захисту, для нашої незалежності, для нашої перемоги. Україна має перемогти в цій війні. Може перемогти. Але разом з усім світом. Наша чітка стратегія буде на столі у партнерів, у президента Сполучених Штатів. Слава Україні!
And Hiram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 941 of the war. And that's moving us on into the second segment of this stream. It's the funnest one of the stream. Make sure to stick around for it because we always enjoy this one greatly because we get to talk to every single one of y'all. And boy, what a night it has been. So far, 53,000 people have watched this stream. And at the peak, there were about 10.2 thousand people here at a single time. I've got to say that we are entirely honored and incredibly grateful that all of y'all choose this channel to get y'all's news. Y'all could get the news from literally any other channel, yet y'all choose to get it here. And I've got to thank y'all massively for that kind of trust, that kind of confidence in this channel. And I hope that we are able to continue on the kind of news coverage that we've continued to give y'all, that hopefully many of y'all have been very happy with so far, for the 941st day of the war. And now, after giving you all of that news, we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And so, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so it's now time for the final question segment of the night, the most highly anticipated segment of the night. And with that, we're jumping into our last poll to address, the long-lasting poll, a 52-minute-long poll. And it says, Ukraine says Russia is preparing strikes against nuclear facilities ahead of the winter, and would Russia actually do that? So 56% said yes, Russia would do something like it, while 21% said no, Russia would not go that far yet at least. And 11% said it sounds like Ukrainian propaganda. And on this one, just to expound upon what's being said here, the Ukrainian intelligence division is saying that Russia might strike directly on the sites of nuclear facilities inside of Ukraine, and they're not very clear if it's to cause a meltdown or simply to intimidate Ukraine and maybe cause them to withdraw some troops. So me personally, I would say that Russia probably would not do something like that, at least right now, because that would be the equivalent of nuking Ukraine. So if they're not willing to launch a nuclear weapon at the country of Ukraine, then they're probably not going to actually directly strike the nuclear facilities, because NATO would view that the same way as a nuclear attack. So I'm with the 21%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to ask, Matthew, Who said this? Did Budanov say it?
So I didn't get the exact name of the fellow that said it, but considering it came from Ukrainian intelligence, it probably came from the top.
I would have to say I'd actually have to go with a smaller group. Russia wouldn't go that far yet because I will be honest with y'all. Like, I just got to say this, having done this for 3 years, about most everything Budanov says ends up being hype talk, and it never really ends up happening. Like, very little of it has happened. The only thing that he was able to say correctly was that the Novokakhovka Dam was going to be blown up. And that's the only thing I've actually seen Budanov publicly get right so far. Everything else he said has ended up just being wrong. And so while I would have generally believed a claim like that initially, I would generally have to say I don't believe that now. Of course, it could end up happening, and I could end up being completely wrong, and I'll be fine with being wrong at that point. But Budanov has a bit of a questionable track record with saying things that end up actually happening and being true. And a lot of people are going to be saying, well, he's saying it, so now they're not doing it. Well, he said they were going to blow up the Novokakhovka Dam, and then they did. And he got that right, and he told everyone about it, and the Russians still did it. So if the Russians were going to do something like this, and he was right about it, then they would still do it, and nothing would change. And so I would generally have to say they're probably not going to do that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That'll kind of be a big thing to be wrong on. But still, at the moment, I'll just be entirely honest with y'all. I don't really put a lot of credit into anything that Budanov says. So that's why I'm in the 21%. That's why I'm actually in the minority there. But let's see. Someone said, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Russia fire near one of the nuclear facilities already? Yes, near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. But that power plant still has not been blown up, and it hasn't been hit directly. And so, once again, throughout 3 years of war, that power plant has been blown up. And if y'all would remember something about Budanov, Budanov was swearing up and down that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was going to be blown up by the Russians. Like, it was legitimately going to be blown up. They were producing satellite pictures, going, look at the shopping bag on the roof. It's clearly filled with tannerite. They're going to blow up the whole roof and expose the reactor to the open atmosphere. All kinds of stuff like that. And then it didn't happen. And we're a year and a half from that now. The nuclear power plant there at the ZMPP still has not been blown up. And that largely discredits that story completely. And then he came out with a whole bunch of others. Like, for example, the Russians were going to start using gas on just Ukrainian cities and killing everyone, and then they really didn't do that. Like, there's a lot of things that Budanov says that just ends up just not being true. So I wouldn't really believe this statement. So that's what I would have to say on it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Once again, I'll say that because I'm perfectly fine with being wrong, but I'm going to have to stand by my conviction that Budanov doesn't really say honest things all the time. Generally, he doesn't. But with that, Matthew, we're on to the next one.
All right. So with that, that was our last poll to address. So we're now moving on to back to our super chats once again. And this one is going to go to Steve Watkins at work, who is still at work, and he's a channel legend at work. And he put in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support. And he said, I'm glad to have you back.
And we are glad to be back, Steve Watkins, at work, still working hard. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again, but we are so happy to be back. The vacation was fun, but to be honest with y'all, I actually miss doing this a lot, and I'm sure many of y'all could tell because I'm really energetic and really excited to be on the show and running this thing every single night, but I love doing this. This is actually like a vacation in its own right of a sort. I just love doing this. This is an amazing job to have, and I'm so happy to be back, and I'm so thankful that everyone is happy to have us back, and I love to know that everyone has been enjoying the channel so much since we've returned. Like today, for example, we put out a short war video, and let me see what it's at right now, because it actually was doing a lot better than I was expecting it to do, and it still is, interestingly enough. Matt, you'll be very interested to hear this. It has a very low click-through rate. It only had a 9.6% click-through rate. That, by actual Mr. B standards, is actually considered incredibly good, but by our standards, it's actually considered quite low, and it still ended up getting up to 173,000 views at the moment, and it's slated to probably get up around to 220 to 230,000 views. So pretty much everyone watched the short war video that we put out today. And not only that, a lot of people ended up subscribing today in insanely high numbers. We've ended up getting just as shy, I said that like in Italian, just as shy of 1,000 subscribers today. We went from 273,200 to, I think right now we're about 274,140 or something like that. So we are Yeah, it's been a crazy day today. It's been absolutely insane. And I love to know that everyone's happy to see us back and things are right back to the way they were before we left, because I love this job. I love knowing that everyone enjoys hearing our news, and I love to know that all of y'all are here with us again tonight. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for saying that you're glad we're back, because we're glad you're back and we're glad to be back. I will tell you that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And also Melanie said average watch time. Well, the video was about let's see, how long was that video? I think it was like 11 minutes long. Yeah, it was 11 minutes and 36 seconds long. The average view duration on that video was 5 minutes and 50 seconds, so a little bit over 50%, which is also considered wildly good by YouTube standards, because usually viewer retention, when we're talking about like the background side of things and how like the analytics work, viewer retention is very important in continuing to sustain a video's push on the algorithms, because if you can get a lot of people in with a good title and a thumbnail, but then they don't really watch for a long time, YouTube starts to receive that input, and then they start to understand on the algorithm side that your thumbnail and title are really good and your click-through rate's good because of that, but the video's dog water quality, so don't push it to anyone else, and then they stop pushing it even if your thumbnail and title were really good. So with view duration, that's really important. So 5 minutes and 40 seconds, really anything over 50% is considered insanely good. Usually the average view duration on YouTube is somewhere in between 30% to 40. So, you know, anything like 35%, 34%, for most YouTubers, that's actually good. Anything up around 40% or a little bit higher than that is considered really good, and anything above 50% is considered divine. Like, that's the best it can get. No one really gets above.
And mine are hovering around 50 to 60 these days, thankfully.
Yeah, I think this one's sitting around 56% right now, and usually mine are sitting in the 50s. Usually all of our videos these days actually sit in the 50% viewer retention rate, which is insanely good. Like, that's wildly good. So it lets us know that not only are we getting a good thumbnail and a title out there, but when y'all click on the video, y'all are actually enjoying the kind of news that we have. And so, and also that's another thing where we're like, you know, like, it really makes me kind of laugh when people nowadays go, oh, clickbait, because it's like, if it was clickbait, no one would be watching more than 50% of our videos. They would be watching like 10% or 20%, and they would be getting right off the video. But everyone watches more than 50% of it on average, and so we know that it's actually news that people are really enjoying. And so I hope that kind of addresses that, like in the background on how all that works and what we look at, because we actually look at that a lot to figure out if the news we're giving y'all is actually good or not. All that kind of stuff is really important, because the thumbnail and the title brings y'all in so that y'all see the news and want to hear about it. So we have to have a good hook to get y'all in, and then once we get y'all in, we have to figure out, is the way we're presenting the news to y'all, are y'all actually liking that, or is there some way we can improve? And YouTube gives us a pretty good... Go ahead.
And also, like, for example, like, not only does it tell us if you like the news we're, like, showing you, it tells us how to present it better as well. Like, for example, on the short war videos, y'all might have noticed that recently on the last few that I've done, I moved all the video footage that I had for the video up to the very front of it instead of spreading it out consistently throughout the entire video. And that's basically because I realized that based on the stats that y'all want to see the footage first and then hear analysis second, instead of having it spread throughout the entire video. And that's really helped viewer retention a ton. By changing that one thing around. So those stats are like very valuable. We study those all the time to see what y'all really like.
Yeah, it's a never-ending kind of like a battle with that side of things, because it's one thing to report the news, it's one thing to actually be good at doing it and do what y'all want. Because and this is something that I laugh at so much, because right now, if y'all ever go over to Hot Dog Man's channel and y'all go check him out, did you see it, Matthew? Because I went and checked it out yesterday. He's whining and complaining because he's losing like 100 subscribers a day now on average, because he's covering political stuff and he's doing it in a really stupid, brain-dead way that no one wants to hear. Like, not even people who agree with him want to hear it that way. And so they keep leaving. He's like, I'm going to keep doing it because I want to do it. It's not like when it comes to actually covering news and doing what could be called journalism, which is kind of what we do, it's not about what you want to do. It's about what people want to hear. And, you know, and y'all want to hear news. So we're not going to sit there and just do what we want. We're going to do what y'all want, because in the end, it's about getting out news in the way that y'all are going to enjoy hearing it, or hearing it about topics y'all want to hear. And so That's largely why we look at the analytics so much and focus on it and push it, and that's largely why the videos are doing so well these days. Like, a lot of them usually, except for this one, get more viewership than we have subscribers, which tells us that we're doing an incredibly good job of getting the news out there, and so many people are enjoying it that we get more viewership than we have subs, which is insane. Like, to do that on a daily basis, not to talk about like the analytics and how well the channel does in the background and everything, but to be able to get most days over 100% of your subscribership watching a video pretty much every single day of the week, that's considered insanely good. Like, to even get more than 50% of your subscribership watching is considered insane. So to get like 100% or 120% on a daily basis, that is nuts. That's actually crazy. So
I think Hot Dog Man's got negative viewer retention to this point. Well, we're getting like 50 to 60% retention. He's getting like -5 or something like that because he's losing viewers every day. Like, I looked at his viewership on his latest streams and like his videos. It was like, I think the video was like 4,000 or 3,000 views or something like that. And the live stream was like almost the same as the video, and I was like, how's that even possible? Because typically videos always perform better than live streams. That's the way it's supposed to work. But Hot Dog Man's like a case for the textbooks, because his videos and live streams are doing equally bad, which is like almost unheard of in the YouTube space. So I don't even know how he pulled that off, but that's like unreal levels of fail.
Oh, and there's a decent amount of people out there like that. That just put out garbage. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, because like the Hot Dog Man, speaking in a, not to like actually critique, but to criticize shitty thumbnails, which it's like, it doesn't take that much honestly to make an okay thumbnail, and crappy titles. Like, the titles are like the stupidest thing ever. Like, sometimes he puts out like rapper beef, which is like, no one's here for rapper beef. Then he'll be like, squib squawk shot at Hukamak, and it's like, who the hell cares? It's like, and then he'll throw in right after that, Ukraine gets Russia. It's like, these are like two totally opposite demographics. Like, that is so stupid. Like, that is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And then when you click on the video, he has no energy. He kind of like mulls around. He does that padding and fluffing stuff that a lot of people do, that is just wasting people's time, disrespecting their time. Like, wow, I mean, really, wow, I mean, wow, this is, whoa. You know, he doesn't have like any analysis or anything. It's like the worst ever. And that's why the channel is suffering over there. And then also, not only does he get into domestic politics, which is like a big no-no here on this channel, and we don't do that, and we don't pick sides and stuff, he will go into it, and then he will demonize people that disagree with him, even in his own viewer base, which does nothing to really help him. So, guy's stupid, 100%. That is the way to not run a YouTube channel, because you literally end up going one step forward and like 90 steps backwards every day. I don't even know how he does it, and I don't even know how in the world the guy can be stupid enough to not learn from it. Because he always talks about, oh man, this is it. This is going to be the year I'm going to hit 100K. And I think at the beginning of the year, he started out like 65,000 subs, Matthew, and he's gotten up to like 67. He's about to go back down to 66. It's like, how in the world can you run a channel like endlessly for a year and only get 1,000 subs? Like, actually, he got more than that, but then he like lost most of them before the year was over. It's like, you have to be one hell of a terrible YouTuber to be able to do that. Like, I don't even know how you could do that.
He's like that stereotypical like image you get in your head when someone's like trying to crawl out of a hole, but the walls are smooth and they can't quite get a grip, so they start clawing up the wall a little bit and then they slide right back down to the bottom. That's like him on the YouTube channel. He can't keep any progress that he ever makes. Like, if he makes progress, then he'll jump to politics and destroy it all. Then he'll go back to Ukraine and start building them up again, and then he'll destroy them all again. It's like he's self-sabotaging, that guy.
Man, better yet, the honest way that it goes, he's like a homeless guy who finally just got a tent, and then he found a flare gun and shot it into his tent and burned it down and said, sons of bitches shouldn't like tents anyways. It's like, dude, you idiot. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, you don't do that. Like, and the guy's stupid enough that he thinks that what he's doing is good. Like, he sits there, y'all, like, this is the craziest thing to me. He'll say this stupid political stuff. It truly is brain dead. Like, he's brain dead in one way. There's brain dead people in the other direction, but we're talking about him right now, so it's particularly about his version of brain death. And he'll be as brain dead as it is. He puts out like the most mainstream kind of political takes, in the most stupid and obnoxious and ignorant sounding ways that he can. And then he sits there and says, no one's going to stop me from putting out the truth. People need to hear this. Like they aren't hearing it from literally everyone on that side at this moment. It's like you are not like the arbiter of truth here. That is ridiculous that you would try and like push it that way. It's like everyone is saying the thing you're saying. You're literally copying other people. Give it up and be original. Like for once, put out something that actually is not copying someone else's thumbnail. That isn't just reading off a news article. Like actually put some effort into it for God's sake. Please, like just do something that is actually original. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. With that whole thing, it's funny though. I gotta say, it is so funny to watch. But that is certainly something that I would say 100%. If you ever do a YouTube channel, don't be like that guy. Like actually listen to your viewers and do what they want and appreciate their time and actually be an upstanding person running a channel. Like really, please do. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on. Well, let me make sure that we didn't have to address a live chat. We didn't. But huge thanks once again to Steve Watkins at work. I hope that does address that incredibly well. I don't know how we got on that rabbit hole, but that was a funny one. I was getting a kick out of that one. But still with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And this one goes to Ari Soini, Kiwi Wife and Finn, longtime channel legend, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Ari, for that support. And he said, LSA, and glad you're back.
And thank you so much, Ari Soini, Kiwi Wife and Finn, for keeping this channel running and helping this channel to be possible. If it was not for folks like you who were here on this channel and helping us to keep this thing running, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And I got to say that it is wonderful to know that the Kiwi Wife and Finn, all the way from down there in New Zealand, are still watching this channel and supporting it even right now. I'm happy to have y'all here tonight. I hope y'all been enjoying the news so far and enjoying everything that we've been doing, all the annex that we've done, the Diddy jokes, the has no balls jokes in Lebanon, all that stuff. And of course, huge thanks to you once again for helping this channel to be possible. And we are glad to be back. I cannot say that enough. I love the vacation, but I missed the channel a lot. I missed all of y'all a lot. And it was really good to get back and hop right back into this thing immediately. We literally got off the plane. We got off the plane and we immediately started getting back to work. Like I got off the plane, we got back to the house, and I was already sitting down and responding to emails and stuff in the background with composers and video editors and all that stuff, getting everything back on the move. Hopefully we can get the China-Taiwan video out soon. We're hoping that that will be the case. There's been some things going on in the background though. We don't know when that will be. Hopefully it'll be within like the next 2 weeks or the next week. I'm hoping that that's the case. But it should be out soon, and hopefully it'll be incredibly good. And also, we will be changing up our intro here in the very near future, but I will make sure to belay all of your fears. The Bayraktar song will be saved. It will not be at the end of the countdown, though. It'll probably be in the midway portion or at the very beginning, because I want to make sure to make room for the Armed Forces medley that we're making, because it honestly costs a lot of money, so I can't really back out of that now because it took so much to get to this point. So it will be in there. It's just that we will save the Bayraktar song, though. It'll kind of like swap places. But the Bayraktar song still will be around. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Huge thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Jocelyn White, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Josh, for that support as always and helping to keep the lights on. And she said, keep up the good work and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Jocelyn White. We will be keeping up the good work. We will be trying our best to make sure to keep this news coming out 6 days a week and videos coming out as much as we can every single day, because it is absolutely incredible, fun stuff to do. I got to say that it's wonderful thing, and I got to thank you so much once again for support and wanting us to keep up the good work, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. But I saw someone say, Matthew, in the chat, someone said, should I get editors? Where? I'll tell you this, I can't really talk about that too much at the moment, because this is actually the first time that we've ever used a video editor, so this whole experience has kind of been new for us, and it hasn't actually rounded out yet. So I would be honest, I can't really make a comment on that yet. I kind of got to see how this all pans out and see if it ends up good or not. And you know, and if it ends up being really good, then that's great. And if it ends up not being so good, you know, then we'll have to revisit this and maybe tell a different story. But anyways, with that, I hope that does.
Oh, you want a simple answer? Let's see who asked that question. It writes Crispy said, where should I get editors? Where? The simple answer is Fiverr. It's not really $5. Like that's sort of like a little bit of a misstatement there. It's more like a few $100 before it's over with, or maybe a few thousand depending on what you're trying to get edited. Or you can find an independent editor, which could be a little sketchy, depending on if they're going to actually like have a good work ethic or not. But either way you go, you might get a good result. But I think like mainly trying to get a professional editor, like on Fiverr or Upwork or something, probably the way to go. But they're a little pricey. But anyways, that's all I was going to add.
Also, one more thing I will say is. Well, I'll hold that off. I'll hold that off until the fat lady sings and of sorts. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. But let's go get that live chat, Matthew. What do we got? What do we got?
So the live chat question here goes to Montern, who says, I've heard that there was a Russian drone attack on Latvia, validity unknown, and thoughts.
Oh, no, the validity is true. There was a kind of like a drone attack in Latvia. A drone ended up flying about 40 miles into Latvia. This was like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. But it ended up landing and exploding near the town of Rezekne, right here. It was somewhere around the A15 highway off here near to this village of Bumbiskas. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it ended up actually exploding in the woods out there. It was a Russian drone. The validity is verified. The Latvian government did make a statement about this and also summoned the ambassador of Russia to Latvia about the incident. So this actually did happen. It's just that it was a little while ago, and it sounds like some people, as it always happens, ended up finally getting off their asses and reporting the story. So some people are hearing it for the first time ever. But if you were on this channel, you heard it here maybe 2 weeks ago or so. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I would say this. Don't mean to toot our own whistle here, but every time I hear folks coming around with stories like that, and they're like 2 weeks old, and they're just hearing it, and they're asking about it, I don't mean to like really like plug the channel or anything. I mean, y'all are here, so I guess there's no harm in it. But if you really want to get like the most up-to-date news possible, please watch this channel. I can't really assure the quality of the other channels. Some of them end up being really slow. Some of them just kind of like, some of them really do it like it's almost a hobby. Like they're actually not telling people important, pertinent news around the world. They're just doing it for the hell of it, which I find really disrespectful to folks. So if you want to know like what's actually happening on an hour-to-hour basis, this is a really good channel to be on because we usually are the first to every single story. We actually end up beating the mainstream news a lot of the times, like Fox and CNN on reporting things by massive margins, by hours before they even get to the story, and we have a lot more detail and information here. So if you want to get those stories when they're actually happening, make sure to stick around here, especially for the streams, because while they're long, we are telling just about every single thing that happened that day when it happened, instead of about 2 weeks later, and then you find out about it, and then you want to know more. But by that point, the story's actually been long dead, and the world's moved on. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for asking a good question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to, excuse me, goodness. It's always around this time of the night when my cough and stuff starts acting up. I try to hold it off, but it starts acting up, so excuse me. But this one goes to the Gaming Murph, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Gaming Murph, for that support. He said, love you guys, and thank you very much for the kind words. Hey. He said, is it possible that all 3 ammo storage facilities were hit by storm shadows, and the U.S. and the U.K. have said that there will be no statement about it until after they're used?
And I thank you so much for the support, the Gaming Murph. And that's a very interesting question. From what we know, they haven't been. From what we 100% we know that the facilities up at Torpets, and let me go up to Torpets right here. There we go. Both of the facilities at Torpets were hit by drones. We know that without a doubt at this point. We were able to get the footage of drones flying in. The Ukrainians made a statement that they used drones to hit them. We know that they were drones. But the one down in the area in Rostov-on-Don, and let me make sure to go actually down here in the Krasnodar area of Tigettes, we don't know what hit that one yet. It may have actually been a missile, maybe a storm shadow, but we're still kind of leaning towards drones because the Ukrainians are using drones and they're getting a lot of effectiveness out of them. And so we're assuming that it most likely was a drone-based attack, but there is a sliver of a chance that it actually could have been some sort of a missile-based attack with a Storm Shadow. It's just that we haven't gotten verification for that yet. And once again, this channel does work entirely off of video and picture evidence to confirm our news stories or official government statements, either from the Russians or from the West. Depending, of course, we really end up not using a lot of Russian government statements because most of them are just markedly untrue. Like, they killed 900,000 Ukrainians in a day. That's clearly a lie. There's not even that many Ukrainians in the Ukrainian armed forces. But if there is an official government statement from someone that comes out that says it was a Storm Shadow, then we can say it was a Storm Shadow because then we actually have the proof. At the moment, that would be more so conjecture on our end, trying to say, oh yeah, it was a Storm Shadow, because we really don't have any proof on our end to know. We don't have a video showing us debris fragments of a Storm Shadow or actually showing us the Storm Shadow flying in or the sound of a Storm Shadow flying over. We don't have pictures of debris. We don't have an official government statement at the moment, so it would be raw conjecture or rumor for us to say that it was a Storm Shadow. So we're still leaning more towards the more practical answer, which would be a drone attack. But it could be a Storm Shadow. So I hope that kind of answers why we can't say with 100% certainty that would be a Storm Shadow or why it wouldn't be, because we really don't have enough proof to go either way at the moment. But we're still going to be leaning more towards the drone side because that seems to be the more likely answer at the moment. But still, a huge thanks to you once again, the Gaming Murph, for the support. I hope that does answer that question incredibly well and also answer why that answer is that way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next question here is going to go to Butchie the Crouton, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Butchie, longtime channel legend, for that support. And they said thank you for being there. And you guys rock. And thank you very much, Butchie. They said, my coffee tastes so much better in the morning now that you're back. And please take a succulent live chat in LSA.
And LSA, baby! And I gotta thank you, Butchie the Crouton, for the support. And thank you for saying that we rock. You rock, Butchie the Crouton, Butchie777. You've been here forever. Like, literally endlessly. Endless days you've been here. 941 days, actually, probably, and still here. And I gotta thank you so much for that. And also, thank you for saying that the coffee tasted better in the morning. I'm not going to lie, y'all. When we were on the train, I ended up getting Amtrak coffee from like their little percolators out in the hall of the coaches several times. They had some pretty good coffee, like just straight black, no sugar, no cream. It was actually pretty good. I was really impressed with that. I thought it was going to be like some pretty shoddy coffee, but it was actually pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. And so I got to say, thank you so much for support. I had a pretty good time with coughing myself on the train, and it is good that we are back, and we will make sure to take a succulent live chat meal. What are the charges? Taking a live chat? A succulent Chinese live chat? How dare you, sir? Get your hands off my super chat! This is the bloke who touched me on the super chat, people. Oh! But beyond that, still, I hope that does address that well. We will get that live chat, and of course, along with the LSA, and what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so real quick, let me grab something here, and there we go. So, let's see, this one goes to Pixel Lord, who says, do you think that NATO might intervene if Russia begins attacking nuclear plants? It's a threat to NATO members.
It's possible that we would. I would be honest, we probably would not, because that's an internal Ukrainian affair, and while it is threatening NATO, it's inside of Ukraine's sovereign territory, so we would probably provide a lot of material assistance to try and deal with the meltdown, but we probably wouldn't get directly militarily involved for something like that. Generally, considering that the United States is very strong on de-escalation almost at all costs these days, rather than a more sensible approach and kind of dealing with it on a situation-to-situation basis. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running and helping this channel to be possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Natasha Millman, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Natasha, for that support as well. I don't see a comment attached to it, sadly, but we do appreciate you helping to keep the channel running, the lights on, the coffee brewing, and also the computer's ticking. Hopefully not ticking in a bad way. Hopefully ticking like they're working, not about to like explode or something. But thank you very much, Natasha. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, a huge thanks to you, once again, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible, who help us to keep this thing running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, where would we be right now? We wouldn't be able to be anywhere. And so, While you didn't throw in a comment, the support does mean a great deal. And I got to thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, helping us to make this thing possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we just wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so, a huge thanks to you once again. Long live the LSA. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And real quick, I put up a poll right here. Put up a poll about the earlier discussion we were having because I'm actually very interested by this discussion. And the question says, do you support opening mental institutions to house/rehabilitate homeless persons that commit crimes? 58% said yes, it's a better alternative to than jail, while 20% said no, put them in jail like anyone else and punish them for the crime, and 11% said only if it's cost effective. And on this one, I gotta say that if someone truly has a mental affliction and it is proven, like by a doctor, that they are indeed mentally impaired, then putting them in jail is probably not the right thing to do morally and probably not the right thing to do for society either, because throwing them in jail is just going to make the situation worse and also subject them to some harsh conditions that someone suffering from a legitimate mental problem shouldn't be subjected to. So now that I think science is starting to understand mental issues a lot better, they should probably open up mental institutions of some sort. Maybe not like the old horror houses of the old days, but maybe some new form of a more modern mental institution, and try to make it as cost effective as possible to make that a alternative to jail, only for people that are proven to be mentally afflicted, not just anyone who says, oh, I have a mental problem, let me go over there. No, that's not going to work. You have to actually go to jail if you don't have a mental problem. But I would be actually with the 58%. That's actually something we should look into quick, because the country has a large mental health crisis, and we're starting to better understand the causes of these things, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed pretty quick. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I would support the opening of mental institutions. We actually, people complain about mental institutions of old, the ones that ended up getting shut down back in the late 70s and 80s. But still, I'll be honest, they weren't that bad. And another thing that a lot of people will notice if you'll ever dig into statistics is that as the population of mental patients started to rapidly decline in the late 70s and early 80s, the amount of people who were incarcerated in the United States was rising at the exact same speed that the amount of mental patients was dropping. These mental patients were going out onto the street, and of course, because they have mental issues, they're ending up doing things that are criminal, and then they end up getting put in prison instead. So they're pretty much, it's not that they just got put out on the streets. They almost all got put into prison, and then they either get revolved in and out of jail, and then they end up just being a problem for everyone. And so I would say that reopening mental institutions probably would be a pretty solid move. And also, I got to say this, while trying to make it cost efficient would be a good move, I feel like at some point, civic institutions like that should be expected that they're not going to be cost efficient entirely, and they're not going to be the most efficient thing possible. It's a public service that may end up requiring some expense, a little bit more than the bare minimum. And it's just something that has to be done. It's something that will improve society. And for that reason, I think it's a necessary inefficiency if it ends up being a little bit more expensive than the bare minimum, just to keep them in a mental institution if they actually are mental. And that's just kind of the way it works. And a lot of people don't like the idea of that because they say, oh, that's not great. You're putting them in a mental institution. Really, for them, it's that or jail. So what seems a little bit more morally appropriate? Putting them in jail because they have a mental issue, or putting them into a mental institution because they have a mental issue and hopefully finding a way to fix them? Or if there's no way to fix them, then they just sit around in the mental institution and they're not really bothering or hurting anyone in the public because of their mental affliction. I would say that that's probably a better way to go about it.
Also, the truth is, when you throw someone in jail, there's a huge cost associated with that. So if you were to simply take the people with the mental afflictions that you would have normally put in a regular jail and look at the cost of that, I would imagine that the cost of putting them in a mental institution or a facility that's specifically designed to deal with that specific problem that a lot of people in America seem to have these days, and you put them in the mental institution, the cost could probably be about the same as putting them in the jail, which is something that would, if it was studied, people would probably see that and realize we need to actually separate the people and actually rehabilitate them instead of throwing them into prison and letting the prison population take care of them in a really, really bad way. And also basically teaching them worse ways to be even worse off when they get out later. It's basically teaching them to be criminals, career criminals, and they're prone to it because they have mental afflictions to begin with. So, to me, I would say probably put them in a mental institution myself.
Also, I saw someone say you don't know, you really don't know what you were talking about. I do for a good bit because I've looked into this a fairly good deal and read about it on the side. And of course, I'm not an expert. I don't really think there is an expert in this, though. This is all just opinion. So saying you don't really know what you're talking about, that's kind of a subjective thing. I would say that this is a major issue that's affecting the United States. It doesn't really affect many other countries because they generally have a solution to this whole ordeal. And a lot of people are saying, well, mental institutions weren't great because people end up getting beaten. Do y'all know what happens in jail or prison? Like, prison guards regularly beat prisoners. Hell, a lot of the times they end up doing things sexual to them that would be considered criminal, especially criminal considering the kind of relationship that prisoners and prison guards have. Prison is the alternative for these people. They're not going out into the world and living a normal life or anything. That's something that a lot of people are not understanding here. A lot of these people are in the mental institution because if they're out in normal society, they're probably going to do something violent or criminal, and that's going to get them put in prison. That's why they went to the mental institution in the first place. If you put them back out in the street, there is no, well, they're in happiness now. No, they're going to do something that gets them put in prison, and that's probably going to be a lot worse for them than whatever was happening in the mental institution. That's the thing I'm saying. Like, yeah, the mental institution isn't going to be great and isn't going to be sunshine and rainbows. You're going to have people in there working with nut jobs, and some of these nut jobs are violent. And these people that are working with the nut jobs are going to get tired of dealing with violent people. Might end up taking out their frustrations on them. Like, that's a reality. Is that good? No. Should that be curtailed? Of course. Like, that generally should be dissuaded and curtailed and punished if people do that to the patients. But at the same time, it's either that or they go to prison, and things are going to be a lot worse in prison. I can guarantee you that, especially in a state prison, which a lot of these people would end up in. State prisons are literally brawlhalla. That's the Thunderdome. People are getting injured and maimed in state prisons a pretty good bit of the time, and also it's a pretty violent place to be. Is that a good place to put mentally ill people? No, that'd make them worse. Like the mental institution will still be a little rough, but I would say it's far better than prison. And considering that there's really no way these people are going to end up just hanging out in the streets or having a normal life anyways, I would say that putting them in the mental institution is a lot better than putting them in prison. Like, that just seems like a very clear solution to me. May end up costing more, but I'll say this as well. A lot of people are saying that this is completely too expensive for the government to do. So what y'all are saying is that we can spend $200 billion giving it to Ukraine, but we can end up spending a couple of $1 billion to open up a national mental institution, a federal institution, or some sort of a state institution, or just giving out grants for states to do it. We're saying that's too expensive, but we can go and fund entire wars overseas. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We can dish out the money to Ukraine, the Middle East, East Asia, and then also have enough money to go around to go throw into mental institutions. It would not be that expensive. We did it all the way up until the 80s. We can do it again today. There's no bar to that from expenses. A lot of other countries are doing it already. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, because that's largely kind of the world we're working with. I don't like to work in kind of like fantasy land where, oh, we take them out of the institutions and then they're just living a perfect life. No. If that was true, it would have been reflected that a lot of these people got out of the institutions and then they just went on into living normal lives. That's not the case. A lot of them got out of the institutions and they immediately did something bad enough. They got incarcerated and put into prison. So this is their alternative. They either go to prison or they go to the institution. I would rather say the institution is a lot better for these people and hopefully would help them instead of prison, which isn't going to help them and is only going to make them worse. And so with that, I hope that covers the basis, at least with what I'm thinking. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, David Tablet said, no disrespect intended, but how do you intend to get around the 14th Amendment? And the 14th Amendment basically says they can't basically put anybody in prison or something like that. Or no, wait a minute, hold on. Let me reread this. It said, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Well, the catch is they're convicted of a crime, though. So the 14th Amendment wouldn't apply here because they're about to go to jail anyway. So instead of going to the jail, they go to the mental institution. So that's how the 14th Amendment would play into it. It really wouldn't play into it, really, because they're about to go to the penitentiary. But anyways, moving on from that, we're moving on to our next super chat here, and this one goes to Steve T, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support. He said, "Do you think that with the new thermite technology, the Ukrainian drones that attack the weapons facilities could have had thermite warheads? And would you think dropping thermite over military airfield aircraft stands to be effective?"
I think that would be really effective, actually, if they were able to have the range on them to do that. Because most of the Ukrainian long-range drones aren't like the FPV drones where they can hover. They generally just have to fly like an actual airplane. So they may not be able to do that in that sense, but they could possibly try and rig them where you could drop a thermite grenade onto that position and then burn it. You could do something like that. So as far as that goes, I would say it's pretty effective for that kind of a role, and I think that thermite grenades being dropped onto shelters for aircraft at airfields probably would be a pretty viable option going on into the future, because a fire will burn down an airframe about as good as an actual explosion would. And so with that, I got to thank you so much once again for support and asking a really good question, actually. That was a really good one, Steve, and I hope I was able to address that one incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rice Crispy, who puts in a $17 donation. And thank you very much, Rice Crispy, for that support. Rice Krispies. It sounds like Rice Krispies. But they said, "Our friend HBO Matt." "Oh, you found my HBO show. I'm glad to hear it." They said, "They told me about your channel. I'm glad he did. And also, keep up the good work." And Rice Crispy, I had to tell you, that's actually me. That's HBO Matt right there. Telling you to come see this channel right here, which is also where I met as well, on YouTube. So thank you very much for that support. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel keep on running. It's pretty cool to hear that the word's spreading about the channel and folks are just popping up and watching it. And interestingly enough, Matthew actually watches a good bit. Well, actually, my dad really watches an insane high amount of auditors, so he may have watched your channel at some point. Pretty cool, actually. But I still got to thank you so much once again for the support and being here on this channel. Really cool to hear that you finally made it here, and I hope that you're enjoying it and that you're here to stay, because the Lee Spring Army and this channel is one of the nicest communities, one of the nicest channels out there. Not because of me, like, it's really because of the community. Like, I didn't want it to sound like that. I'm like, it's the nicest channel. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's because of me, because sometimes I could be a little bit short, especially with the bots and stuff, but the community is absolutely incredible. The Lee Spring Army is truly a grand one, and I hope that you really enjoy it, and I hope that you find a good little place to stay here every single night at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And so a big thanks to you once again. Big thanks to HBO Matt as well for watching, and of course, thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Rice Crispy once again, who puts in a $17 donation. And thank you very much, Rice Crispy, for that support for the second of the night. And it said, "Find a job you like, and you'll never have to work a day in your life." And also, HBO Matt sent me to your channel.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And also, that's entirely true. Find a job that you like, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's something that, that is such a hard conundrum for most people, because a lot of folks really can't find the job that they like because of how society kind of works. It's kind of the necessity of how society works. You kind of have to get out there and hit the ground running immediately, and there's really no time to really try and figure it out. So a lot of people think, "Oh, I really like this field," and then they'll get into it and they already know they hate it, but then it's too late to really change and they just have to commit. That's almost what we had to do with law school, but thankfully we don't have to do that in the long term. Like, we just got out of it and now we're all good and doing this full time. And I would tell you all this, if I was an attorney, I would have hated that job so bad. I know Matthew would have too. We both would have hated it about the same. It just was not for us. And when you have like such an alternative like this, where you get to do, like, where I get to do something I really love, which is getting to talk about news, getting to talk about military analysis, history, and really anything and everything anyone wants to talk about. I mean, last night we were going into absolute craziness with what we were talking about, but I absolutely love that. This is a job that I would have never expected to have. I remember telling someone in high school, because they said, "Dude, I want to be a YouTuber and play video games." And I was like, "Dude, like, think of a real job, man." I was like, that's not like a job. And then I did it as a job. Like, that's the weird thing. I feel sorry for telling that guy that, because it's like, he could have actually done this as a job. I didn't even know that this was an actual option. But beyond that, I gotta say, that is entirely true. I'm so happy to be able to do this. I'm so happy that we've been able to do this for 3 straight years, just endlessly, except for the vacation that we took a few days ago. But still, huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you once again for watching this channel on top of that. And so with that, Matthew is actually going to be hopping off at this point. We're going to be continuing on the journey, but Matthew will be getting off because he's still feeling a little under the weather and he's still trying to get a little bit better. And a lot of y'all can tell he's got a pretty rough cough right now.
Yes, I'm going to hop off early, partially to save my own voice and throat and stuff like that, because right now it's in a bit of pain, but also to save y'all the pain of having to listen to me cough and start really hacking here at the end, because I'm really starting to do it bad. I'm having to mute the mic every 2 seconds. So with that, folks, I will see you all tomorrow, hopefully in better shape than today, but I have a feeling it's going to be lingering for a while. So I'll just have to work through it. But thank you all again for bearing with me tonight on that. And also thank you all for another great stream and all the support. And I'll see you all tomorrow on the next Night of War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also maybe on the Short War video tomorrow as well. But with that, good night to you all.
And that is a good night to Enforcer Matt right there. And we're going to be continuing on as we have been tonight and getting on to the rest of the questions and some live chats. And let's see. Also, someone said Portland and Seattle are whack. I don't know, man. I saw Seattle. It was really nice, actually. Portland, though, I will agree. That was a really, really wild city right there. Unfortunate for him. But still, moving on from that, we are now moving on to the next super chat, which is a $10 super chat from Whistle Britches. Hey, Whistle Britches said, how many ammo storage dumps are within 300 miles from the border? If we had a list, we could check them off as they are hit. We don't really know for sure. We know that there's about 13 major ones. Now there's 12 after the explosion up at Torpets. But there are about 13 major ammunition depots within Western Russia. Most of them are within 300 miles of the border. Some of them are just a little bit beyond that. But as far as the minor ammo depots go, we don't know how many of them there really are. There probably is a good bit of them, just because they're smaller and therefore logically they're going to be a lot more numerous. But we don't have a list of the smaller depots. We only have a list of the larger ones. So right now it went from 13 to 12 and we're counting those down, but we don't know about the small ones. Hopefully I can find a list for that here in the future. But still, a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Whistle Britches. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Bobo Vasquez. And Bobo Vasquez said, gonna hop off tonight. I'll catch up on the rest tomorrow, young buck. Hang in, and thank you so much for the support, Bobo. And I hope that you've been having a good time watching tonight. I hope that you have a good time off and get some good sleep, because sleep is so important. You can't get enough of sleep. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing running, and for that, I got to thank you massively once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Aztecian Prick. Hey! Very interesting name. And I got Black Goo from the Hot Dog Man and Vladiclaus. Prometheus would be happy. And I don't know who Prometheus and Vladiclaus is, but interesting here that you got Black Goo from man. And I would have to say that that's probably the 100 subscribers they lost right there turned to goo, or their brains have been turned to mush, one or the other, from the absolute dog water you get over there. But beyond that, I got to say thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We would not be able to make this thing possible. And I gotta thank you massively once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one. And also I see some people asking about some stuff, and also I see Mestiza clarifying it. Some people are asking where is so-and-so, or where is who and that and where and why, all that stuff. I'll try and address that really quickly. Some people on the channel end up doing things that cross the line, and of course everyone is subject to the rules. We don't really make exceptions or bend the rules. There's a certain level of civility that everyone's supposed to have on this channel towards each other in the live chat, towards us, and we try to have towards all of y'all. And sometimes people break those rules. And I see some people asking about a specific person. I'm not sure if I have the name correctly, but they were around for a while and then they disappeared. I think that person ended up getting banned. And I remember why. And it's always for a pretty good reason, because for some reason they'll always pick a hill to die on. I don't know why, because y'all know how we do things here. You know, we'll say something if people disagree. We're totally fine with that. But if you start getting violent with us or with other people and you start cussing them out, that's where the line's drawn. And I think at some point we said something, and they were like, "You're an idiot," and we were like, "Well, hey, look, man, like that's pretty rude. You might want to back off of that." And then they said something like, "Screw you, asshole, f you," and then they got banned. And that's just kind of how it goes. That's something that we don't really say a lot on air, but when we say things like we have rules about civility on this channel that people must follow, that's not just for us, and that's not for y'all amongst each other in the live chat. That's for everyone. That's a rule that crosses across the board. It doesn't matter if someone's been here for a week or years. If that line is crossed severely, people will be banned, because we are trying to make sure that this thing stays as civil as possible and as polite as possible. And once someone crosses that line, and we have given chances before, once someone crosses that line, they never come back, because they did it once and they're going to do it again. Because if they tell us off once and we try and let it go, they tell us off again, and then it just ends up being a never-ending loop. And then people see them telling us off, and so then they also want to hop in on telling us off, and then they want to tell each other off. And that is something that we absolutely do not tolerate here on this channel, is people devolving the channel into chaos because they just don't want to be decent and civil to other people, or they don't want to be decent and civil to us. So if you ever see someone disappear, it was for that reason. And I will tell you all this, generally I will say this, because Enforcer Matt's the one in charge of this stuff. Enforcer Matt gives a little bit more leniency to people who have been here for a while, like people who have been here for years. But if they cross the line and they get banned, it was 100% for a very good reason. We do sometimes go back and reverse bans, like that does happen sometimes because there was a misunderstanding, stuff like that. But when people do get banned, that's for a good reason. Like we're not doing it just willy-nilly just because someone disagreed with us and we didn't like it. Like Brenda B in the live chat said, you know, I think you're wrong. Like, that's fine. Like, yeah, you can think I'm wrong. And all day long. I mean, you got a right to say that. You got a right to disagree. I mean, I'm not going to ever tell anyone that they can't disagree and everything I say is absolute. That would be insane. But if someone wants to start cussing us out over something that they disagree with, that's where the line is drawn. Or if they start cussing other people out because they disagree with them in the live chat, that is a line that's going to be crossed. We have the same rules for all of y'all dealing with each other as we have for y'all dealing with us and us dealing with y'all. The only time that I break that rule is when we're banning a bot. Sometimes I'll end up roasting them, but that's because they're gone and out of here. I'm not ever going to do that to someone and then expect them to live with that disrespect here in the chat. That would be incredibly disrespectful to them and really rude, because they're a person just like me. So why treat others the way I wouldn't want to be treated, and why would they treat me the way they wouldn't want to be treated? That's largely how we moderate the live chat. But with that, I hope that does address it well. While Zombie Graphics says, I want news. The news is over. Like, we are 3 hours into the show. The news was over, I think, around an hour ago. So if you want the news, go back to the 10-minute mark of the stream when it started, because that's like the end of the intro and everything, and that's raw news, straight gas, for the entirety of like an hour and 40 minutes. So if you want to see that there, that's where you go and get it. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Andrew Schenk. And Andrew Schenk said, hey guys, I've been watching for about a month. I love the coverage. That being said, do you get YouTube AdSense? I would be willing to make my donation regular if you don't. And no, we don't. We actually do not get YouTube AdSense on these streams. The streams run ad-free and sponsor-free, and they've always been that way. And just in case if people do not believe that, which it's totally fine because we try and be as transparent as possible, I'm going to whip y'all over here to the to our channel dashboard or our channel control room and show y'all. Here is the current running live stream right there. It says it's live, and many of y'all will see the thumbnail and the title lines up. Huge explosions, cripple Russia, Lebanon bombed, day 941, that's today, and the monetization is off. We don't have AdSense on these streams, and we never do. Some of them end up getting copyrighted, though, and so they're ineligible for monetization. by and large, so we couldn't even turn it on anyways, but all of them are off. They've been that way since the dawn of time. We don't make a cent running the actual live streams, and that's something that a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people don't want to show on YouTube, is that most of them do have the AdSense on when they're running a stream because they're trying to eke out that little extra bit of cash. I'm not that money hungry to do that. Like, we have to do this as a job and a living and everything, so we do have to make an income doing it, but I'm not going to sit there and money grub to the point of turning on monetization. So to answer your question, no, there is no AdSense on any of these live streams, not a single bit. So any of the money that we make running a live stream, it just comes directly from viewer support, and that's it. Or we don't make anything if people don't support the channel. And so I hope that does address that well. But as far as like making support regular and everything, you don't have to. Like really, no one has to support the channel at all. This channel is an ad-free, sponsor-free stream. We want people to hear the news, but we also don't want people to be burdened with feeling like they have to give us money to run this show. So many people have never given a single cent to this channel, and we don't expect a single cent. Why should we? I mean, y'all are picking this channel. That is a high enough honor in itself. If y'all want to go beyond that to support this channel, we are having our socks knocked off if that's the case. And we thank everyone who does. But you have to be under absolutely no obligation to support this channel at all. You can just sit back and watch for years. I mean, we have maybe 30 to 40 super chatters every night, and out of that, there's about 120,000 people to 100,000 people who watch this stream every night. So 99.99% of everyone watching the stream has never given a dime to the channel, and I never expect them to. I mean, they're here to get the news, and we're giving them the news, ad-free and sponsor-free, the way I think news ought to go out. And if we make support in the meantime, and we are able to make this thing a living and do this as a job, then that is wonderful. But beyond that, we're not really expecting much of anything. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. But please be under no obligation at all, Andrew, to go out of your way to have to support the channel regularly. I never want anyone to feel like they're under that kind of an obligation. You can support it on and off if you want, support it not at all, or support it nightly, and we'll be happy to have you here either way, any way you want to be here. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Thank you so much once again for support, and also thank you for the kind words and enjoying the coverage and supporting the channel after only being here for a month. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And also, Hardwater said guilt trip. No, like legitimately, you do not have to support the channel. No one has to support the channel. There's a lot of people who have been here who are in the live chat who haven't supported the channel, and it's fine. Like it literally is fine. Like when I say that, like, I don't know, like, I'm legitimately trying to press the point. It's fine to be here and not support the channel. Like, I don't, like, if people take that as a guilt trip, don't. Like, it's not supposed to be. I'm just trying to tell y'all that's how we run it, and that's how we expect y'all to watch the show. Like, y'all don't have any obligation to this channel to give it a dime. Like, we're not Disney Plus. We're not Netflix. We're not expecting a monthly subscription. We're just happy to have y'all here. We're just happy to have y'all watching. And if y'all support it beyond that, we're all over the moon about it. Like, really, we are, because that's how we make a living. But with that, hope that does address that well. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one. I'm actually going to have to skip ahead here to Laser314, who threw in a 2. Hey, a legend, by the way, an old guard. And Laser said, when is train time tonight? Right now. You know what? We're going to go pull up a good one. The Pennsylvania Railroad GG1. This thing is the cat's meow of electric trains here in America. Really cool. I think these things were really, really neat. Love them to bits. They were used a lot by the Pennsylvania Railroad. Let me see if I can get you all a good picture here. This is one of them in New Jersey in 1964. I just think they're neat. Like, they're incredibly cool. And I wish that they were around in much larger numbers today, but they really aren't that much. They are in museums, though. And we can see one right here in the original Tuscan red Pennsylvania Railroad livery. And you can also see one right here, an Amtrak, interestingly enough, Pennsylvania Railroad GG1, undergoing a restoration back to its original, I forgot what kind of a black this was, but it's the black and gold striped livery of the Pennsylvania Railroad. And they also put this one in the Illinois Railway Museum. Pretty cool. But I really like the early electric trains in the United States. They actually were all like really, really unique and and really interesting kind of designs, and you don't really see that a lot anymore. Also, another one that's pretty cool, though, I will say this one was neat, is the toaster, the AEM 7 built by EMD. This one right here. Me personally, I really like the AEM because it's literally just a box. It looks like a toaster. And these things were really neat in their own right. They operated a lot in the Northeastern Corridor, but they were eventually retired, I think, in favor of the ACS-64, if I remember right. And then there was also that failed thing. I forget. Let's see. It's like the HH-8. Let's see. I don't know if it was the HH-8. Let me see here. This thing was succeeded by what? Come on, it's got to tell me. Oh, this thing was ugly. Okay, I got to show y'all this one. The GEE-60 was god-awful ugly. Like, I hate this thing. Really, I do. It was like one of the stupidest looking electric locomotives ever put out in history. Look at that. Like, it was just ugly. Like, there's one thing to be said for a box, but there's another thing to be said for, like, this goofy front hood that they put on these things. I think it looks ugly. And I just hate these things, really. And they failed, and I'm glad they failed. They should have failed even quicker. But let me see here. I'm trying to find y'all something here of, like, dang, I hate this. Let me see here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, here's the AMD AE7. Yeah, and so the AEM7s continue to operate until they were replaced by the ACS-64, which are these. I really like these. They just look nice. Like, I think they're aesthetically pleasing for an electric locomotive. And they do a pretty good job. No one really complains about them. They're pretty decent. This one's actually on the Crescent, going northbound from Delaware. This is actually the one that passes through Birmingham, Alabama, and you can tell because it says it's the northbound Crescent. And you can also see the Viewliner sleeper cars back there in the back, the dining car, and then the 3 coach cars at the front. Coach car is Brawlhalla, by the way, just in case y'all don't know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can with the trains. That was train time. I hope y'all enjoyed it, specifically about electric trains tonight, which is pretty neat. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Adam McLean. Hey! And Adam McLean said, I'm somewhere around my 1-year LSA anniversary. I'm going to call it today. Thank you so much for everything you've done for myself and the LSA since the beginning. And thank you so much, Adam McLean, for enjoying it. I hope you have a good night tonight, and I hope you sleep well. Sleep is very important. Get a lot of it if you can. But thank you for the kind words, and thank you for enjoying everything that we've done. I've been more than happy to do it. I've loved to do it, and I got to thank everyone so much for always enjoying it and always supporting it and always helping it to keep running, because y'all help to make this vision, this dream, stay alive, and it means a lot to me that y'all do. And so have a good night's sleep, Adam McLean. Thank you so much once again for the kind words, and of course, long live the LSA, and thank you for being here for an entire year nearly at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one, which is a $60 super chat from Scott. And Scott said, would you guys consider flying to Poland, taking the train to Kyiv, and doing a live stream from Kyiv for a few days? I would, if it was not for the fact that a lot of people have done that and they've made it look really bad, in my opinion. And I'll explain that the best I can. A lot of people who are in this sphere that cover the Ukraine war news have gone to Ukraine, and they've specifically gone to Kyiv. And I have personally not liked how that looks from a third-person perspective, in my opinion. It cheapens the war. It almost makes it look like it's a vacation of a sort. And that's not what the war is supposed to be. The war is incredibly tough. There are a lot of people dying and getting wounded in horrific ways every single day out there. And I don't really like it when people go over to Ukraine to take a really cheap vacation in a war zone and make it look like they're saving the world. So I would generally say that we wouldn't do that. But to like expound on it a little bit more, once again, goes back to the hot dog man, because the hot dog man is the best example of this. The hot dog man raises money for trucks through a specific nonprofit that we tried to reach out with and work with, and then they completely ignored us, which is just wonderful. But moving on from that, we sat there and watched this guy raise the money for the trucks. And then he guilt trips his audience into giving him money to go pretty much on a vacation over there to drive the trucks into Ukraine. Now, that was the part where we started to really criticize that, because it's like, the thing was that your community raised money for the trucks, which is great. You know, that I can't deny that. That's great. They got trucks for Ukraine. But the problem is that now he's going to guilt trip his viewers into making them feel like they're obligated to give him a vacation out of it. And I didn't like the look of that. And then the thing that I really didn't like is that he went over there and it was a vacation. It was not business at all. It was a vacation, and maybe he'd make a video on the side. And so he ended up showing up in like Poland or something. He ended up driving the truck. Actually, he showed up in the Baltic states. He drove them all the way through Poland, then into Ukraine, and then stayed in Kyiv as long as he could. And to put this out there for y'all, people who go to Ukraine and they make it look like they're saving the world over there, that's not necessarily the case, because of Ukraine being in a major war, the tourism economy has dropped off completely. And so the cost of being in a hotel over there is literally pennies. It's like nothing. It just costs a couple of dollars a night. It's like $30 a night to stay in a very high-end hotel over there, because no one's staying in them because it's a war zone. And everything's incredibly cheap. The food's really cheap. The alcohol is really cheap. So you can go over there and you can live it up and have a luxurious vacation at almost no expense. And then you can pretend like you're saving the world by doing that. And that's something that I'm just not for. It was a terrible look, especially when this idiot would take pictures and like being in a bar with a whole bunch of other YouTubers, and they're absolutely getting shit-faced, and they're laughing, and they're joking, and they're having a fun time. And at the exact same time that they're having this really cheap, luxurious vacation in a war zone, some Ukrainian soldiers just got their legs or arms blown off on the front lines, or end up getting killed, shot, or maimed by artillery while they're over there having a vacation at almost no expense. That is a really horrendous look, in my opinion. Like, that's a horrendous look. Like, that is so dissociated from reality. It's like a YouTuber version of being the Bourbons in France. Like, you're in Versailles, you're having cake, and you're partying, you're having this fun time, while all these people out there are just having the worst time of their lives, just about 100 miles away. They're dying and getting maimed. They're living in hell. They're hardly eating, or they're living in squalor. Like, it's like, that is such a bad look to me. And that's why we would never do anything like that, because we would largely end up doing the same thing. Because I'm not going to get in the trenches, like, quite clearly, they didn't either. And so you end up doing the same thing. And I feel like that's a terrible look. Like, once you look beyond the surface of the stupid kind of a mirage that's being presented by some of these people, where they sit there and go, look, I'm in Ukraine, I'm doing something. Like, what are they doing? Like, let's ask ourselves that. What are they really doing, rather than being in Ukraine and making the same videos that they would have made if they weren't in Ukraine? They're doing nothing. They're just over there getting a really, really cheap vacation and making people believe that they're actually doing something. They're doing nothing for anyone. They're doing the same thing that they would have been doing in their home country while in Ukraine and while getting a vacation out of it. That's just something I will never stand for, in my opinion. Also, Destiny Edgington, I think, let me check. I will go and grab that one. I don't see it in the spreadsheet. I think that one may have been skipped. I will go and grab that one, though, Destiny Edgington. Sorry about that. But that is a horrendous look. And that's why I just am not a fan of doing something like that. And that's why I would never personally get Matthew and me flying over there and then get into Kyiv. And also, the cost of that is insane. Like a round trip ticket from America to Poland is about $2,700 for a single person in economy class. So think about that. That's economy. That's not going in business or first. That's the cheapest it gets. It's about $2,700 for a single person round trip. So for Matthew and me just to get to Poland, it would cost $5,000. And then at that point, that is completely uneconomical just on the flight side of things. And we're doing no benefit for anyone. We're just burning money to show up in Ukraine and then pretend like we really did something for them when we did nothing for them, and we just virtue signaled. And that's why I'm not really into that. So I hope that explains that the best I can, and also why I'm not really a big fan of doing something like that, because it's just not a good thing, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Let me go grab Destiny Edgington's, because it looks as though that one may have been missed. And let me make sure. There we go. And I'm so sorry about that, Destiny Edgington. It was missed. And Destiny Edgington threw in a 10. Hey! Their 20th super chat in the history of the channel ever. And Destiny Edgington said, is India making missiles for Ukraine? India is actually selling a lot of stuff to Ukraine, tank munitions, artillery shells, and we believe also MLRS rockets as well. So from what we understand, they actually are. It's not because India is aligning with Ukraine or anything. It's just a good money-making opportunity for the arms manufacturers, and why miss out on money? That's kind of India's stance, because they're largely kind of neutrally aligned in this war so far. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And sorry that that was missed for a little bit. And thank you for bringing that up so that we could circle back and catch that. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. And the next one is a $10 super chat from Leora Avagile. Hey! Leora Avagile said, Abigail, sorry, it's Abigail, not Avagile. And it said, hey, enforcers, I hope you had a great vacation. LMFAO, I'm curious on the reaction of what happened in the last few days in Israel. It was freaking genius. Curious on what y'all both thought. And, oh, I thought it was hilarious. We've been making jokes about the whole Patriot thing for a while. We've been talking about Hezbollah is now renamed to Has No Balls. We've been joking about how they just don't have the balls to do anything. We have been making fun of this to the moon and back. It's one of the funniest things that's happened. I mean, they literally got their balls blown off. Like, that's hilarious, really. Like honestly, as far as what you could do to enemy combatants, that's probably like the craziest thing ever, is to blow up their balls with their pagers. Like, who would have ever thought? But I think actually it was absolutely hilarious. And so with that, I got to say, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well, Leora Abigail, and thank you once again for being here with us tonight and supporting this channel and helping it keep on running, because folks like you do help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is an $8 super chat from Bob Anon. And Bob Anon said, do you think the reason Russia didn't follow through blowing up the ZMPP was because China made a public statement about it at the time? That may have been the case, but I really think the Russians weren't ever going to blow up the nuclear power plant, really, to be honest. Because, like, Budanov and them were saying, oh, it's going to happen, it's just a few hours away, it's going to blow up, whatever. And they did that, like the Ukrainian intelligence did that. So that tells us that that wasn't something that the Russians backed off, because they didn't go, oh, the threat's decreasing. They literally just dropped the story. So I think, honestly, Budanov just kind of made it up and just ran with it until it clearly wasn't ever going to happen, and then he just dropped it immediately. That's what it kind of looked like to me. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from CK Bold. And CK Bold said, take a live chat question. If CK Bold had said anything different, I would have been shocked. And I got to thank you so much once again for the massive support, CK Bold, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to grab ourselves a live chat question. And that live chat question is from M. McKernan. And M. McKernan said, what if Belarus sends troops to Kursk? If they did that, the Ukrainians really couldn't take further action on that. That's more so internal support for the Russians. Also, there isn't really much Ukraine could do in retaliation. Maybe they could try and hit Belarusian military targets, but that would threaten Belarus getting offensively involved in Ukraine, inside of Ukrainian territory, and that would be something that the Ukrainians may not really want, because they could actually end up possibly getting overwhelmed if that happened. Although the Belarusian army is small, it could tip the scale. So that's what I would have to say about that at the moment. That was probably the likely kind of scenario that we would see unfold in that sort of an event. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you once again, CK Ball, for sponsoring the live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is once again from Aztecian Prick. And they say, Geschlick mal like man in die deutschen Bank. And I can say, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I have not done that in a while, like a long time. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and helping this channel to be possible. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Real Vlad Putin. And whoa, it's the real one. And Real Vlad Putin said, Slava Ukrainian. Look, even Putin's even losing will for the war at this point. He's going Slava Ukrainian. That's no Putin I know. That's a flip. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing rolling. And so Thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one, which, believe it or not, is another $5 super chat from Aztecan Prick. And he said, I also have the Artemis Fowl from my friendly Martian. And I thank you for the support and sharing that. I don't know what that is, but I thank you for letting us know about it. And I will look into that a little bit more if I can. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And the next one is a $5 super chat from Kachulian343. We actually have two $5 super chats from Kachulian343. And so we'll read them both. And if Diddy did do it, if Diddy did do it and Diddy diddle the defendants, does that mean Diddy is done dropping dumb, tiny music? And are there updates from the Belarusian forces on the border? I'm sure it's a bluff, but haven't heard any updates. Also, have you thought about covering Sudan? And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And very interesting question right there. Also, I like the Diddy did do it thing. That was pretty funny. And also, Belarusian forces on the border, that actually kind of died down and disappeared. We think they actually were there for some kind of a war game and left because nothing has happened so far. And the good question about Sudan, we actually tried covering that. It's like a very little known thing. We had to cut the segment short. It was not really received well. That was kind of the thing. Nobody wanted to hear about it. And news is dictated a little bit. We try and tell everyone everything we can about everything going on, but if people just like buck an entire news segment, we can't really cover it. So everyone bucked the segment. Like, everyone hated it. Everyone thought it was stupid. A lot of people said, who cares about what's going on in the backwater country like Sudan, stuff like that. So we actually had to end up annotating that segment when it came out on the day that civil war started and cut it short and just move on. So we would cover it, but a lot of people really don't want to hear about it and don't want to eating up time from other major hot points like the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And so that's why we do not cover it. I would have, but a lot of people didn't really like it while my esophagus collapses. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Also, Maik, the capper, said, what happened in Sudan? Well, what happened is a civil war broke out in Sudan. Not South Sudan, but just Sudan. And it's still ongoing at the moment in between the Syrian radical forces, the SRF or the RSF, the reactionary Syrian Sudanese forces, and the Sudanese government. It's still ongoing at the moment. Doesn't really look like either side's winning. It seems like it's going to be pretty drawn out and a pretty costly war. So that's what we know at the moment. I don't really pay attention to it that much, though, because people disliked it so much. I was like, I'm just going to throw that out into the periphery and not really pay too much attention to it. But that was the last update I had heard for about 2 months ago. But with that, I hope that does address both of those incredibly well. Thank you once again for support, Kachulian, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Quantum Fire said, Myanmar would be interesting as well. I wish we could cover that. Myanmar is a really low intensity kind of a civil war. So it's really hard to cover it because big things aren't really happening each and every day where we can get like a definitive story. It's like a very asymmetrical, low intensity kind of a civil war. So it's a really tough one to cover. We could try and tackle that someday or maybe make like a documentary video on it, like a standalone documentary. But I don't know we'd ever be able to include that into our normal live stream news cycle because it's pretty burdened as it is with the amount of news we have to cover in just the Middle East and Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I thank you once again for bringing that up, though, Quantum Fighter. Good point. And LSA Sergeant Figment threw in a 2 and said, LSA, hit the like button. That's in order. Hey, and hit that like button. We've actually gotten up to 3,200 likes tonight, which is pretty freaking high. And I got to thank everyone for hitting the like button so far and enjoying the stream. I can't thank y'all enough for it. I really appreciate you. And so with that, thank you once again, and please do hit that like button. And thank you once again for support, LC Sergeant Figment, and helping this channel to keep on running. And to round it out, we got two $2 super chats from Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee threw in the first super chat and said, my 2 cents adjusted for inflation, LSA, and Pimp Marmot Fund. And you know it, we've got to get that Pimp Marmot, and it simply is the pimpiest of marmots. What's up, bitches? Hey, it's the Marmot, baby! And we love to see the Marmot. We love to see Alan the Marmot, bitches. And what's up, Governor? We got ourselves a nice little cigar, a nice little pimp stick, and a nice fluffy pimp hat. And we love to see the Marmot. We absolutely love them. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping us to see Alan. And thank you once again, Bruce Lee, for being an old guard and a channel legend as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I hope that was a little bit of a look at the Pimp Marmot, the absolute Pimp Marmot. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into the question segment. And boy, do we have many live chats to cover. But before we get to that, we do have to get to the Morse code decoders of the stream, which were Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernier, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Stephen Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, and Arbel Garbo. And the Morse code for tonight from the LSA Signal Corps: Ukraine wants to see fireworks, and damn it, they're going to get some. Long live the LSA, and great job, guys. Just got home, and that's the sound of money. And you got that down on the nail. That was absolutely 100% of the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct tonight. That's actually pretty impressive. And I got to thank y'all once again for always making sure to get that Morse code message correct every single day y'all are here. Even on the 941st day of the war, y'all are still getting it dead on the nail. And so with that, I hope that does addressed it incredibly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into the live chats. And our first live chat is from Green Arrow 511. And Green Arrow said, do you think Putin's latest threats are legit or just another smokescreen? In my opinion, they're really just another smokescreen, because he's laid out these a lot before, and they generally have never been, well, they've never been followed through on. Not generally, they literally have never been followed through on. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from David Long. And David Long said, I heard that India has been supplying Ukraine with thousands of shells. Have you heard this, and can it be confirmed? Yes, it can be confirmed, because we have picture evidence of Indian shells and MLRS munitions showing up in incredibly large numbers inside of Ukraine. So that is not only something that is a rumor that we've been hearing a lot, we actually have proof that they're showing up in very large numbers, and the Indians are supplying the Ukrainians with a decent amount of munitions. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Certain Def. And Certain Def said, November 1st, Russian law changes such that electronic notification is only a sufficient draft summons. Thoughts? That is something that the Russians have already been moving towards a pretty good bit. They actually moved that earlier in the war, where they could, if mailing wasn't an option, they could just digitally notify someone. They actually made that a thing way back earlier in the war, and now they're just going to make it to where that is the thing. So that seems to be just moving along the lines of trying to streamline the Russian bureaucracy, considering that it's really competent and inefficient in its own right. This is going to make it a lot easier, at least legally, for them to start drafting people. So that would be my answer to that. It is just trying to, once again, get through the Russian corruption and make things a little bit easier. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Praetor. And Praetor said, I heard that the depot hit last night had a Satan II in it. Is this true, possibly? It may be true. I would doubt it a little bit, because I don't know why they would be storing a intercontinental ballistic missile in there. Usually they move those directly into the silos, because what is the point of having an intercontinental ballistic missile like that if it's not ready to launch? Because those have to be ready to launch at pretty much a moment's notice. So I would largely doubt that there was one, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. I would just say it's highly unlikely, but not impossible. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night, which is from Eugene Minton. And Eugene said, when lightning hits the ground and sound takes about a mile to be heard where you are. Is it the same with explosive detonations like this one? Yes. Sound travels at a universal speed at a certain kind of air density. So down here on the deck or sea level, sound travels at the same speed, 730 miles an hour roughly. That can change based off of the amount of, the atmospheric pressure, the temperature, the humidity. Those things can change the speed at which sound travels. But sound travels at a universal speed down here close to the ground. And that usually is around 730 miles per hour. So with lightning striking and the shock wave or the sound of the explosion hitting you, that is actually at the exact same time, about 730 miles per hour. So I hope that answers that fairly well. We are on to the second to last question of the night, which is from Christian Cruz. And Christian Cruz said, question, with fighter aircraft becoming more advanced, wouldn't it be easier for an enemy to kill the pilots before they arrive at work? I'm thinking that would work for the SBU. Maybe you could do something like that. Killing the pilots, though, is kind of only part of it. You usually want to also you want to kill the pilot and destroy the craft at the same time. So you could try and assassinate them, although that kind of actually would be a little tough. Usually these pilots stay on base a lot and they really don't go off much. And if they do, they're usually somewhere where there's some sort of a military police presence. Sometimes they don't. And that would make it a little bit easier to whack them. But beyond that, I would generally say, in my honest opinion, still would be better to shoot them down with a plane. But you could assassinate them if you wanted to make it a little bit easier to just knock out available pilots if you wanted to really do that. So, honestly, not that bad of an idea. It's an interesting and kind of a out-of-the-box kind of a way to go about it. I would say it wouldn't be the way I would go about it. I still want to shoot them down with a plane, but still, that's not a bad idea at all, really, to be entirely honest. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night was Avari Mandabratis. And Avari said, Tianjin is a bigger explosion than these ammo dumps. Ask your brother to check it out. Truly a scary sight. And let's go check out the Tianjin, let's see, explosion. And let's go, the 2015, oh my goodness. Let's see here. Location of the explosion. Non-fatal injuries. There was 173 people killed in this explosion. And there it is. My heavens. That is a hell of an explosion right there. I actually had not heard of this one before. 800 tons. Oh my goodness. About equivalent to 256 tons TNT equivalent. Let's see here. It was not immediately known. Background, explosions. Let's see here. How many tons of TNT? How many tons of TNT was Hiroshima? And it was equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. And this was equivalent to 256 tons of TNT. So it was a really big one, but it was not close to Hiroshima. And I would honestly have to tell you all the other explosions that we've been seeing inside of Russia that have been staying close to Hiroshima. Now that we actually have a TNT tonnage here, I would say they're probably not that close to being Hiroshima. Probably very far off. But still, that is one hell of an explosion right there. What was the blast radius on this thing? Oh man, I'd have to read a lot, sadly. I'd have to do this off stream. But still, let me go see if I can find some footage of this. Let me take this off screen and let me go grab some footage, because this would be an interesting way to round out the night. Tianjin explosions. Oh my goodness. Let's check this out. So here we go. Here we go. We got it right there. And
Whoa! Holy shit!
Did you get that?
Fuck yeah, I'm videoing it.
dang.
What the fuck?
Oh, here it comes.
That might be a gas station or something.
Fuck yeah, it's a guess. Whoa! Oh, what the?
Oh my god.
Holy shit!
That would be my reaction.
No fucking way! Oh shit! Oh shit! No, baby! No!
Nice. Are we dangerous here?
Yeah, we're
Oh, wait a minute, there was a second explosion right here.
Wow!
Oh my god.
I think we are dangerous.
That's actually pretty crazy. I did not know that there was an explosion that happened in Tianjin. That's really close, by the way, to Beijing. Tianjin is right there. And let's see, where in the world would that have been? That probably would have been down at the harbor, if I can find the harbor. And, geez, I wouldn't know. Let's see, down here somewhere, maybe? But that was crazy. I had never seen anything like that. That's crazy, right there. Thank you for sharing that with us, Safari. That was one hell of a way to round out the night, seeing that explosion right there. And with that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say a huge thanks to all of y'all once again for enjoying the stream tonight, watching the entire thing. 65,000 people have watched this stream since it began, and 10.2 thousand people were here at the peak tonight. We are entirely honored and incredibly grateful and appreciative of all of y'all being here tonight and once again watching another stream. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon. The link is in the description below. And of course, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
Yes.